Welcome back to the Sportsball Podcast, where we are your source for sports, and I am your host, Zach, joined by Andy. Notably missing this week is Nathan, who has arguably one of the best teams in the NFL right now, and he just decided he doesn't want to talk with us about it.
He's already planning his Super Bowl trip, and he's just taking a nice extended break from everything just to prepare for that.
And this is absolutely not going to backfire on us saying this at all. And he's going to love it, every bit of it. Now, he's due to scheduling stuff, he's actually busy this week. So similar to last week, which notably we did not have an episode last week. So we're catching up. So we got a lot to catch up on, especially as Husker fans for ourselves, but also just sports fans in general. But since Nathan is not here today, we thought that it would be fun to bring ourselves a guest onto the podcast, and who better than my younger brother, Mr. Jet Kuntz.
Hello, sports fans.
Welcome to the podcast.
Mr. Worldwide 305.
Happy to be here. Mr. Casual in the flesh.
So we'll have to put up with a little bit of echo here and there, maybe, just because we'll want to eventually chat over each other. But yeah, my younger brother Jet decided to join us this week. So if he becomes a fan favorite, we'll see. Might bring him on more. But we got some other changes that we're going to bring to the podcast also. Not necessarily changes, just maybe a little different, some different fun stuff that we like to, add on. So let's get started actually with probably the hottest topic in sports right now, in my opinion, being the MLB. Because I don't know about you, Andy, but I watched that Padres game last night, Padres and Dodgers. And as of this recording, by the way, it's a Monday. So the Padres game, Sunday night game, absolute banger.
Mm-hmm.
Absolute banger.
There was, I think it was about the 7th inning, maybe the 8th inning. Things were starting to brew up that entire game. And I think the main point when you go back is whoever the Padres left fielder is when he had that home run robbery. And you watch the replay so many times and you look and, he's standing there like jumping in front of the crowd and everybody's like, does he have the ball? Does he not have the ball? Did he rob a home run? And Mookie Betts is just still running, like circling the basics because everybody thinks it's gone. And then all of a sudden he's like, oh, I have the ball. And I think from there was just probably just a lot of back and forth, crap talking between the Padres outfielders and the fans. Eventually, things started getting thrown onto the field. Baseball's trashed at the, Padres outfielders. The game probably was stopped, I think, 15-ish minutes between innings. Just so
I think
that
the official number was actually 13.
13, yeah.
I think they said that on TV. It was 13 minutes.
Yeah, and that's, for MLB wanting to speed games up, obviously that is not ideal, but they had to get security involved pretty much along the entire outline, like lining between the stands and the wall and the outfield at Dodger Stadium. And, the game eventually went on, and then the Padres were already up. And then I think it was probably the 9th inning where, they went off and just had more home runs. Tatis's home run was just like an absolute, big F you to the Dodgers and their fans when he hit that home run. So, yeah, things were quite spicy in that series. But even if you go back to even before the playoffs start, when we had all those wild card scenarios, specifically the Mets and the Braves, and it mattered very much to both of them because you had the scenarios like if the Mets sweep or if the Braves sweep or if they tie, the Diamondbacks are just kind of hanging out in the wings, like our fate in the playoffs determines who either wins the Mets or the Braves series. They eventually split. So both the Mets and the Braves got into the playoffs, and the Diamondbacks were left sitting there like, whoa, we kind of got screwed out of this. But, if you want to look at any inside jobs about the Mets and Braves making the playoffs, that might be 2 games that you want to look into and see if there's a conspiracy theory about who got in there. But
what conspiracy theories in sports? Never.
Absolutely no way. But then the Mets and Phillies series has been extremely entertaining.
Oh, yeah.
Because I think it was game 1 where Pete Alonso had that monster home run to give the Mets the lead, I think. Or am I thinking of a different series? No,
I didn't
had to have
catch
been
that one, so I don't want to speak out of turn by any means.
It might be
so.
that. But game 2 is what I remember more, just because that game 2 was definitely a back and forth. And then, of all people to hit the walk-off hit, was Nick Castellanos. And if you know anything about him from the internet and what Castellanos does in terms of the baseball world, it's not good things. What he does, great things. Usually something terrible has happened when Castellanos hits a home run.
And we were sitting there asking last night when it happened, like, so what bad thing happened in the world?
That's the type of player that Castellanos has turned into, and there's some sort of devil magic because it is untimely how good he is at doing that. He hits a home run and then some world or celebrity dies or something like that happens, and he's really good at doing that. But
this sounds terrible. I was waiting for the announcement after he hit that, even though it wasn't a home run. It feels like it's the home runs that are really the bad ones. But this one was just a base hit, which is what prompted them to win, obviously. But
yes,
I was waiting for them to be like, oh, like Jimmy Carter passed away or something. Be like, no,
yes,
like this can't keep happening. You can't
it was
keep
very
getting
close.
away with it.
Oh, the Pete Alonso home run I'm thinking of was the Brewers series. The one that, where the Mets scored 4 runs in the top of the ninth to win the series against the Brewers, and Pete Alonso's home run was like the go-ahead home run. So that's what I was thinking of.
Speaking of freezing cold takes, by the way, I remember like a couple weeks ago when we were recording where I said, oh, you know what? I think the Brewers are a dark horse to potentially get to the World Series. Whoops. That didn't turn out to be true.
They tend to do that every single year in the playoffs, and it is extremely funny how consistent they are at doing that.
It's, baseball. I know I said at the beginning of the baseball season, as we were recording this, like, I'm going to get more into baseball. And I tried, but I wasn't very successful at this year. It's kind of similar to how like hockey got me last year, where it's like I started watching playoff hockey, and I understand like a regular season, there's a lot more that goes on. There's a lot more that happens. It is what it is. But this one, I was like, as I'm watching these last 2 or 3 playoff baseball games, I'm like, okay, I get it now. I might not necessarily understand everything about it, but I get it. Baseball's fun. I love it. I know Jet doesn't really watch baseball, so he's kind of just been sitting here on the screen the whole time. But
I'm just kind of listening. Like, baseball is the one sport I really just don't watch, and I obviously should. I'm looking at the scores right now. The Padres game just kicked ass. I mean, the Mets and Phillies game actually looks really close, and it looks like I missed something pretty electric. But unfortunately, I just don't watch baseball. Like, I just don't.
Hey, I was the same way when I was,
like that's
last
fair.
year.
That's right. Fair. I need to get into it though, because I'm wearing a goddamn Cardinals hat right now. So I mean, I probably should watch baseball. I haven't gotten around to it yet.
And as we're recording today, I mean, we just finished up the Detroit's and the Cleveland's first game or second game.
Second. They're tied. They're tied 1-1 now.
Yeah, and
I'd say breaking news, but this doesn't come out until Friday, so
right.
It's not breaking news.
That game was 0-0 until the top of the ninth, and then Detroit hit a monster 3-run home run that eventually did win them the game. So,
and it was so awesome. That was again. It's just like
for Detroit.
I was like, this is why you watch baseball. I get it.
Yes,
now. Like this is fun.
These are the moments you have in the MLB playoffs. Is you have really electric good teams, and obviously you're a very good team if you make it to the playoffs, but everybody's got their all-stars and their aces on their pitching staffs, and every pitch, every hit counts in the playoffs. And you're never out of it until you get the final out, no matter how many runs you're down, because crazy things have happened and crazy things continue to happen. But yeah, this division series has been super fun to watch so far. And I know the Yankees and Royals are about to start here pretty soon, but who knows what that series will look like by the time this comes out too. The Yankees might be up 2-0. Royals might come back and tie it up 1-1. I hope. I've never wanted to root against the Yankees harder in my life than I do this entire playoffs. We got rid of the Astros, so that's a plus for everybody.
That's right. That is the win.
I think it was the Royals that beat them. No, Royals played the Orioles. The Tigers. The Tigers are the ones that took out the cheating Astros. So
the Tigers are the team currently because of their underdog status and their last stretch in this month and a half or whatever. That's the team like I'm following.
And we need to put all of our energy into Padres to
also yes
beat LA. Nobody wants to see the Dodgers there.
There you go, Jet. Now you don't watch baseball, but now you have an excuse. Like turn on the Padres game every time there is one.
I think I'll have to start doing that. I'll definitely next week.
Series goes back to San Diego now. That's going to be. I will be very interested to see how the crowd reacts now to the Dodgers and their outfielders. So tensions will still be there, but it's they're longtime rivals, and it's no surprise that things bubble up at times during their series. But definitely when you have players like Fernando Tatis, Manny Machado, and Machado's been definitely a long time trash talker.
It's so fun watching him too.
And it's just you might not like Manny Machado, and there's certainly been times I've never liked Manny Machado, but that's just who he is. That's his personality, and he is like a grade A trash talker. He does not hold back on anything. And I mean, during those cutaway breaks last night, they just handed over to Machado, whoever he was talking to. I think the other Dodgers pitcher, and both of them just from their separate dugouts are just going back and forth at each other.
That's my other favorite thing about baseball is just like the trash talk that happens, but it's like half mile between them.
Oh yeah.
So that these guys are just screaming at each other. I know it's not actually that long, but like they're just screaming at each other, just like
like every chance that there's a break that you can get up and try to yell between dugouts is what they're doing.
So good.
But yeah, that's again the rest of the division series is going to go on, but if I'm not really necessarily rooting for a specific team other than anybody but the Yankees or Dodgers at this point.
Yeah, I mean that seems fair. I'm kind of looking at the bracket here. If I were to pick, just let's see, there are 8 teams left. Yeah, 8 teams left. I don't know. I think the Phillies. I think the Phillies would be fun to see.
And that's
and of course the Tigers experience. I guess.
I mean, if you've ever watched, the Phillies in playoff baseball, I mean, obviously Philly's just a rowdy city, but when it comes to anything playoff time, that stadium's electric to watch.
But
things happen.
as a known Eagles fan, Philadelphia is also known for one thing, and that's their choke ability. So let's hope they can. Let's hope they can
greasing light poles after they win.
Well, I mean. I honestly think that's why they're so rowdy. It's because it's like there's been so many times where like we have good teams, not we, like I don't live in Philadelphia, but like the Philadelphia crowd that lives there and like breathes it every day is like, we have these really good teams and we really, really root for them. And they expect a lot out of them, which is all great in a fan base. It's, similar to, I think, how Nebraska fans feel. However, they also are known for going off the rails when they actually get it to go where they need it to go. So there is, a bit of a middle ground where Nebraska is known for like, yeah, we just beat you by 40 points. High five. Like just not Philadelphia fans. And I love it. I love rowdy fans, but that, too much for them.
But yeah.
Anyway, well, I figure we'll kind of keep an eye as we go week by week into the MLB segment, just kind of keep our eyes out as the series go on, and obviously we'll keep reporting on it. Right. Because again, Sportsball, your source for sports. I'm actually going to throw a curveball to you guys though, because I know Jet watches this, and technically speaking, the season has started, so we're going to move for just a little bit over to NHL. And only because there's 2 games to report on, and it was just the overseas what did they call that? It was the Global Series or something like that. It was just a couple games overseas between New Jersey and Buffalo. And I hate to say it, I don't know hockey that well, but the one thing I do know is that the Buffalo Sabres are just not good. So New Jersey won both games, Friday night and Saturday night this last weekend, October 4th and 5th, respectively. Won it, I think, 4-1 and then 3-1 in the second game. So it looks like Buffalo might be in for a long year. And I was watching a video the other day that New Jersey might be on the up and up. But I figure, I know we'll have to follow up with this with Nate too, but I think
Mhm.
he's a Minnesota fan, but he'll have to confirm that. But we can at least talk about the start of the season starting tomorrow as of this recording, which is we're recording on Monday, so the season has started as you hear this on Tuesday the 8th.
Yeah.
But I think, the guest in the house tonight also needs to say that what his team is, because I chose the Predators this last offseason with the Oilers as my B team because we were obviously cheering for Canada to win a cup. And then Andy, what's yours?
The Avalanche.
Right. That's right.
Yes,
Because
the Colorados.
that's right. Because then when Haley listens to this, she'll be like, yay.
Yes, we're giving in to the hockey segment.
But then we're gonna pass it to Mr. Jet over here, Mr. Casual. And he has told me before he actually recorded today that he's really getting into hockey this year. So I want to hear from him.
Yeah, shout out to PlayStation for making NHL 24 free. Got me right into the hockey season, and I'm really excited for this year to start because the team that I chose to cheer on is the Jets. No reason in particular at all. No reason. I just really like their name. I think it's pretty cool. It looks like they're playing the Oilers Wednesday, and NHL did teach me that my character shit on the Oilers. So I'm expecting good things from this game, and I'm expecting good things from the season.
Sir, the Oilers just went to the Stanley
I was
Cup
gonna say
last year. The finals. They
Hey,
went to the finals last
I
year.
said my character in NHL, so he kicked their ass. That's what I'm
I
saying.
was just gonna say
I played for the Jets, man.
It's the Stanley Cup runner-up.
Number 13 center for the Winnipeg Jets was going crazy as a rookie. I tell you what, we only lost 12 games this year. Shit, I mean,
what was your setting? Varsity.
We
Rookie?
ain't gotta talk about that part. We ain't gotta talk about that part. First NHL game. That's all I'm gonna say.
Yeah, that tracks. All right, like I said, that's a short segment on NHL. We are actually going to start paying a little more attention. I know I am. I guess I can't speak for these guys, but I know I'm going to start paying more attention to NHL regular season. I guess we'll see. We'll see how much it takes because, of course, now we got to move to probably all of our sports that we're all best versed at. I guess, I don't know. Nate seems pretty good at basketball. I'm not, but
yeah,
but
if Nate had to choose something that was not football, basketball would definitely be a top contender for one of his top sports.
I do like how it's just me. I like how I keep speaking for him. I'm sure he loves that.
Well, if he wanted to give his opinion, he would
be here. If it was
I'll
important.
play Nate. Fuck it. I'll play Nate right now. Go Minnesota. Go to Minnesota. I don't care.
Anyway, we're not actually going to talk about the NBA, but we are moving to the NFL. So,
yes.
I actually have a short week this week, so I'll start us off. Eagles didn't play. So I had a great football weekend. It was a bye week. Nothing really came out from the Eagles camp other than Nick Sirianni being at the Phillies game, which notably the game that they lost against the Mets. So, of course, the internet was like, get him out of here.
If that's not a sign, I don't know what is.
I was just because then as soon as he wasn't there, assumedly, I guess I don't know for a fact that he wasn't at the second game. But anyway, yeah, Eagles didn't play. And spoiler alert, if you are not as big of a Nebraska fan as we are, it turns out Nebraska also won. So the football weekend that I had was fantastic, at least in terms of my teams. But then the rest of the football that happened, which we'll get to all of that. Oh my God, it was great.
Absolutely insane.
But anyway, that's my weekend for NFL. Eagles didn't play, so I was a happy camper on Sunday. On to you guys.
Yes. Yeah, the witching hour, well, before we even start that, Thursday Night Football was a banger. With Kirk Chains throwing for 500 yards. Absolutely insane.
It was finally a banger, we should say, because the first 4 weeks, the first 4 weeks have been just bad.
You didn't like the Cowboys Giants field goal contest?
No. No, I didn't.
Can't imagine why.
I mean,
But
it doesn't even have anything to do with a field goal game. A good defensive game is great. That's not what that was.
no, that was not. That was just
That was
bad
just
football.
a bad football game. But that's the thing. Thursday night football games have always seemed to be just terrible.
Mhm.
This was the first game where like I watched it, most of it. I didn't see everything, but
Mhm.
I watched most of it and I was like, holy cow, this is exciting.
I mean, you had an offensive shootout. We had free football. And yeah, I mean, Kirko and Baker both went off, and the Falcons look pretty good. We'll see if that's consistent of how they play on offense all year round. I can't imagine they will, because Kirko is still Kirko. He will have his moments like he always does in his career. I just don't know when they'll show up, but that was a banger of a game. And then you go to the London game where the Vikings did prevail over the bad drug man, 23-17, and the Vikings almost gave that away. I know they picked off Aaron Rodgers 3 times and they got a pick 6 with Van Ginkel, but you could see kind of towards the end the Jets were driving, and you're like, is this going to be another vintage Rodgers, game-winning drive? And it certainly started to seem like that. Then the Vikings eventually picked off Rodgers, and the Jets are not good. I think Devontae Adams might want to reconsider where he wants to go play, because I know he wants to go play with Rodgers, and it's somebody you're like have familiarity with. But like Rodgers might play another 2 years, if he doesn't get hurt again. He almost died during that game. If you've seen the pictures of him crawling on the ground, like grabbing his hamstring after he got hit, I certainly thought like, oh, he's gonna be out a couple weeks here. But
I was waiting for them to say that he got his Achilles again there.
Yeah.
To be honest,
yeah, that certainly was looking like it, but then he did eventually come back in the game. But all things considered, like my tagline did say at the opening, we don't apologize for wins. And I'm sure Nate is exactly saying that is, we don't apologize for wins. No matter in the NFL, college football, no matter how ugly, nerve-wracking a game might be, at the end of the game, what matters is the scoreboard and a win. And the Vikings are 5-0 heading into their bye week. They look really solid still. I mean, their defense, I haven't even looked up any stats. I'm sure they are the number 1 defense if they aren't. If they aren't, it's a very close first, but they've got that team rolling. I'll be interested to see. Aaron Jones did go out kind of with that hip injury in the first half, and their rushing attack in the second half was not as good without him in. So I'll be interested to see how, if Aaron Jones does come back. But yeah, they looked solid. I know Nate's not here to speak, so that's why I'm like trying to elaborate a little bit more on his portion of things. I would also say that Nate quote, I'm not even going to jokingly quote, but I'm sure he's going to say they're Super Bowl bound. Even though I know he's not going to say that, but I'm going to say it for him because he's not here. So that's what his take, and that's what he gets, is they're going to the Super Bowl. And you can go to Warhorse Casino, you can go to any casino you want, place that future bet right now and get your money before the odds start going up and you get less of a payout. That's what I would say.
yeah, I was gonna say really the only thing, and then I'm gonna let Jet go because I saw he had some thoughts. But really the only thing that I took from the game is while I agree, I think the Vikings might be well, let's put it this way. If they're not Super Bowl bound, deep playoff run for sure. I'm going to say they're NFC, correct? I always get these messed up. I'm pretty sure they're NFC. Yes, they are NFC. NFC championship, probably. Right now, they look unbeatable. Thing with the NFL is you have to wait, because at any point in time, the bottom, it is, and the bottom can drop out at any point. And the one thing that this Jets game did show me is that
the Jets are not good.
Well, I don't know. The Jets are confusing because they have moments where they look really, really good. And then they have moments that they just look like they have no idea what's going on. And I don't know if you like blame coaching. I mean, you'd have to blame some coaching on that, but I feel like they're just, it's a tale of two identities, because like their defense is really, really good for the most part. And then their offense should be really good. As much as I don't really care for Aaron Rodgers, they should be really good, but they just can't seem to get there. I don't know. To me, though,
I mean, you have
and Garrett Wilson popped off.
Yeah,
Garrett Wilson had the game of his life.
Mm-hmm.
So I mean, the only other thing that I think that I took from this game is that I think this was the first time where the Vikings looked vulnerable. They finally looked beatable. And of course, as more tape comes out and as more things come out, it's more like, oh, you find the tendencies that they find to do, and then good teams start to lock that down. But I don't know. The Vikings look unbeatable at most times. This was the first game where it was like, there might be chinks in the armor, but no team is perfect.
Because they did this. I mean, even if you look back to last week against Green Bay, they were up 28-0, and that game still ended up being super close because Green Bay just kind of clawed their way back. And, it's kind of back-to-back weeks where, the second half for the Vikings just wasn't as strong as the first half. You could say that's very similar shades to Nebraska. But
then you start asking the question of, are they playing conservatively, which you have to assume so they don't get hurt. Well, but then the other thing is now Aaron Jones is hurt. How long's he out for? So,
and that's good that the Vikings are going into the bye week, because then you get that time to recruit, get him healthy back before.
That's a good point.
They're out of their bye week, but I mean that's the only thing I noticed, is at some point, either in the third or fourth quarter, they showed a stat of like Vikings had 77 rushing yards in the first half, or close to that. And then they had 17 in the second half. So it's a very drastic difference when Aaron Jones is not in, of how they manage their running backs. And yeah, you certainly can put the game on Sam Darnold and just say, hey, pass this to Justin Jefferson. That's just going to be the game plan going forward. Similar to kind of how the Bengals and Ravens were yesterday, as Joe Burrow's like, hey, Jamar, here's the ball, go score.
Jamar down there somewhere.
And then the Ravens, or John Harbaugh's like, hey, Lamar, do your thing. And Lamar did his thing. So
he did his thing.
He did do his thing. We'll get to that in a second, because that game was extremely fun to watch too. But yeah, for the Vikings, just, if Aaron Jones isn't healthy enough every single week, how do you deal with the rushing attack that didn't really do much for you the second half? Do you just kind of lean on Sam Darnold and Justin Jefferson to kind of lead you the rest of the way going forward? Or you lean on their defense like they have up until this point and just continue to go with that, which is also not a very bad move to do either.
Sure. Jet, any thoughts?
About the Vikings game,
or any game that you want to hop to, if you wanted to talk about a different one.
I'm a big Saints fan. We did play Falcons last week, and we got the Chiefs tonight, actually. But that Falcons game, that was tough to watch. Saints played a good game up until that pass interference, which actually gave Atlanta a kick to win the game. As much as I want to say, I'm pissed at the Saints, that kicker hit a 52, 54, and a 58-yard field goal or something. Just insane. I got to give him credit. He's going to be the next Justin Tucker, most likely. Jesus, once you cross midfield, what do you do? I mean, you can just kick a field goal, and it's all right, well, there's 3 points. That's awesome. How do you defend that?
I think it is safe to say, though, to be fair, I think we're at a point now, and this is coming from an Eagles fan who ended up actually, watching their team lose to the Falcons, and a bunch of Philly fans going crazy. I think the Falcons might be pretty good.
Falcons are good. I mean, is it their wide receiver Drake London? Is that his name? He's a dog.
Kyle Pitts.
And Kyle Pitts. I mean, everybody knows Kyle Pitts. Everybody knows Kyle Pitts, man.
Well,
Drake's making a good name for himself. He's a good player. I can't hit on him, and he's really likable. I love him in his.
And then you got Bijan Robinson as your running back. I mean,
they got options.
They've got options. It's just, can the Falcons execute them? Which they've been sputtering at times of being able to do that.
They look good when they look good, but they also look really bad when they look bad. They have some very questionable calls, but it's been working for them. So,
and that's what everybody comes to this podcast for, is that expert analysis right there.
I mean, yeah,
that's what we are geniuses at. end of quote, geniuses, nothing.
I mean, I don't know about that. That doesn't seem fair.
But I think it's time that we have a talk about the Commanders.
No thanks. No thanks. No, I'm
I
good.
know you don't want to because they are your division opponent, but Zach, they're
Nah, man, they look good. They
good.
look so good. I'm
It only took Jaden Daniels a couple games to realize how good he is in the NFL already, and he continues to show that.
not only that, you got to give credit where it's due to Dan Quinn. This is his second NFL head coach stint, isn't it?
Oh, God,
I could have
I'd
sworn
to
it
look that up.
was.
You keep talking. I'll research that.
Okay. Well, I could be wrong. I thought this was his second. I thought this was his second stint as a head coach. I could be wrong, but
yeah, Falcons. Yeah,
that's what I thought. Okay, so at the Falcons, he was okay, and then obviously got fired. He made it. What was it? 4 years, 5 years, something like that. So I mean, he did okay there for a while. I don't think he was that. Was his year? Was he there in the 28-3 game?
yes, it had to have been.
Okay, well, so maybe we should bump the brakes on some things. But he's doing really well. He went and got Cliff Kingsbury, which obviously has been running a fantastic offense. And out of all the teams in the NFC East, as an Eagles fan, the Commanders are the ones that like I felt bad for the longest time. So I feel like this is kind of like they're due. And so it's kind of exciting to watch, even as an in conference rival. But in this case, it's fun to watch because Jaden Daniels and the team just in general is just fun to watch. Their first couple games, you're like, wow, they look kind of rough. And then all of a sudden it was like, oh, right. If we just add oil to these gears, they work better. And then they took off. So
a flip was switched.
Yeah, I think you're right, though. I think the Commanders are a wagon. I think there's no two ways to put it. They do look very good.
And there's nothing else to say about it because it's like in years past, you always thought, man, this is such an easy chalk up win to play the Commanders. It's like playing the Panthers right now. It's it's an easy chalk up win, but now they've got things clicking and they look. I mean, you're right, Zach. They're just fun to watch. Even if you don't cheer for them, you can just watch the game and you're like, where's Jane Daniels going to go? It's like watching Lamar and the Ravens. It's just like, you never know what's going to happen when one of those quarterbacks has the ball in their hand. It's just, is he going to take off and run? Is he going to make this acrobatic throw? And this, you take yesterday's game with the Bengals and Ravens. I mean, that Lamar just had some insane, like that touchdown to Isaiah in the fourth quarter. I mean, he bobbled the snap, picked it up, ran to the sideline, missed the sack. Just like he just chucks it to the end zone, like, oh, is he just thrown out of bounds? And all of a sudden, Isaiah likely appears out of nowhere and catches it. And you're like, Lamar just isn't human. And then, I mean, on the other side, I mean, Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase. Jamar Chase is obviously very good. And that insane touchdown. I mean, that was like a screenplay that Joe Burrow threw to him on that like 60-yard, 70-yard touchdown. And Jamar Chase just kind of took his block and just ran it up the field. But that was a fun shootout game. The Bengals probably should have won it. I think they did settle kind of towards the end of the game when they were driving for a field goal that McPherson missed. And then King Henry took over in overtime, and the Ravens eventually won on that Justin Tucker field goal. But Bengals are 1-4 now.
Yep,
1-4. They're just like, they're such an anomaly of a team because it's not like they're losing by not scoring less than 20 points. I mean, they're scoring a lot of points. They're just losing all of these close games. Remind you of anybody else? Not to mention that a certain head coach is from a certain alma mater from this region.
Hey, no. Let's not worry about that. Let's not worry about that.
The Bengals are they're such a weird team to try to figure out if they're good or they're bad. Because
they're a 1-4 team that should have a record of like 3-2 right now.
Correct.
because their first two games, you could look back and you're like, yeah, they didn't look right. And of course, there's all sorts of
inexcusable loss to the Patriots, which again, the Patriots' only win is against the Bengals right now. The Dolphins beat them yesterday. The Dolphins that don't have anybody alive beat them.
It's just crazy. Again, it goes to the point of the NFL being week to week.
It really is.
I mean, I don't know.
They lost in the last second field goal to the Chiefs, which that one could have gone either way, but we know that the script was already written for the Chiefs that game. So we knew the Bengals were screwed regardless of what happened.
I mean, as of right now, the only other team that I would say has, if like we were to go to playoffs today, the only other team that really I think has the fighting chance to continue and go, if we're talking NFC Championship game right now, as of week 5, to me it's the Vikings and the Commanders. Like, I mean, those two teams are arguably right now the best teams in the NFC.
And I was going to put the 49, not the 40, well, I guess both the 49ers or the Seahawks, but then the 49ers lost to the Cardinals yesterday, and the Seahawks, I don't know what the hell they did, but they just didn't want to beat the Giants at all. So, I mean, that's, and now in Seattle was 3-1. Now they're 3-2, but I don't know what the 49ers were up 23-13 and they lost 24-23. Like, I don't know how that happened, but it did.
It's that great coaching by Jonathan Gannon over at Arizona.
Sure. Sure. I'll let you have that one.
I mean, I don't know. It could be. Jet, you got any thoughts?
I'm just happy to see Commanders actually having a good year. Something new, something different. I hope they can keep it up. With that being said, I am still shocked to see Bengals 1-4. I just feel bad for them personally. Like, you got options, you have the targets, and it just seems like every one of their games, just somebody just has luck not in their favor, and just everything goes wrong for them. But I was also really, really happy to see the 49ers lose to the Cardinals. That was just, it made me sleep better that night. I swear to God.
My man.
I swear to God it did.
That game was happening at the same time as Denver. So, like, I wasn't, 100% paying attention to it. I had it on another screen. And every time I would look over, it would be like, 49ers scored. Kittle had a great catch, so on and so forth. And then by the time that Denver was winding down, I looked back and Arizona celebrating with a minute left of the fourth quarter. I'm like, whoa.
Yeah. That last interception, I think I leaped out of my couch when they got that final interception to seal it. I was so happy. I was beyond ecstatic.
It was, I was like, and I had to go back and look at the drive charts of how was San Francisco up 10 points and leading this entire game, and then all of a sudden it's 24-23.
Did Brock just have a bad game? Because I tuned in second half. I didn't get to see it, but
he didn't have a terrible game. It's not like he.
It just looked like he was super frustrated. That's all.
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, I know not having Christian McCaffrey doesn't help, but Mason's been a really good backup option for the 49ers as a running back. And then, you still have Debo and Ayuk and Juwan Jennings apparently now and Kittle. And they just are not as good as we think they should be with all these weapons. And I don't know if that's a big cock Brock thing or if it's just weird.
It's definitely weird, 100% weird. But
I think there's something to Ayuk, because he coming off of injury. Maybe it was
he was holding out for the contract. Debo came off injury.
Debo came off injury.
Ayuk was the one that was holding out, wanted to be traded, eventually didn't get traded. And I don't know if they just franchise tagged him or just signed him.
I think they signed him.
Yeah.
He gave him a good, but I think there's a lot more. I think there's a lot more going on that roster. Because the other thing to keep in mind is Kyle Shanahan is known for being a hard guy to practice for, as in notably, who was the player from the Eagles that went there? I think it was Javon Hargrave. One of the better players from the last few years that played on the Eagles went there, and he made a comment about how tough the practices were compared to the Eagles practices. And he wasn't even necessarily saying it in a sense of the Eagles don't practice. I guess I don't think. but he just noticed like Kyle Shanahan has been known to work. I mean, look at Christian McCaffrey having Achilles problems in both legs.
Mm-hmm.
And not only that, he's been also been known to work the guys during the games a little tough. Like I know Christian McCaffrey is a dog, but like you might need to use your head coach powers to say, hey, we're up 30 points. You don't need to keep running for 30 more attempts. You know what I mean?
Right.
So I don't know. The 49ers look, and as an Eagles fan, I don't
obviously not
like
upset.
the 49ers. No. What my point being is like, I'm looking at it objectively as a football fan. Like I just like good football. And to be fair, the Cardinals game against San Francisco was good football because of the comeback.
Right.
But like when you have the weapons at San Francisco reminds me a lot of like the Eagles right now. And I don't mean that necessarily like one for one. I'm just saying like it seems like something's off. It seems like things aren't clicking correctly. And these teams should be doing so much better than they are. And I understand the Eagles didn't play last weekend, but like something just seems off. Kind of similar to the Bengals. Like at least with the Bengals, I agree with Jets' case there. It's like it seems like at least 3 games. It's like they've played really, really well and just luck. Because I mean, 1-4 is not what the Bengals should be right now.
That is, if you watch any of your games, you're right. It's definitely not what you would think they would look like or what their record would be.
Yeah.
Because I mean, it's not like they aren't scoring points. They obviously are scoring points. It's just like you played the Commanders, who we now know is starting to be really good. You played the Chiefs, who are obviously really good. The Patriots just like that one dud of a game, but then you play the Ravens, who is also like have a really good offense. So like you've played like 3 top tier offenses in your first 5 games so far, and they've also kept up with the shootouts. It's just like the other offenses they played have just been better when it matters,
and they arguably should have won. I feel like they should have won.
I feel like they should.
The Ravens.
They should have. Oh yeah, they should have won yesterday.
But they didn't. I mean, it happens.
It's actually crazy how much their schedule looks like Nebraska is just 1-score losses, just back to back to back to back. It's actually insane.
They're just they've, and I mean the Commanders nobody really saw when the season started, but knowing what we know now, they've just played 3 really good offenses this season so far.
Yeah,
and I thought for a second, the Ravens weren't going to be good. And now they've decided to turn it around and actually be good again.
And this is about at the time, too, in my opinion, where we start to see where teams really are. So, like, week 5, teams are starting to gel. We start to see bye weeks coming into play. So, coming into this next week, do the Eagles actually have something in their book where all of a sudden they're going to be good again? Hopefully. I mean, I hope so, but I don't know. I don't have much faith in that, but I guess we'll see, because it just now we're starting to see those teams like who are you as a team and who officially is going to start taking off towards Super Bowldom. So
And
I was looking at the rest of this list. Oh well, obviously we got to talk about Andy's team, but I'm just looking if there's any other fancy games to talk about here.
I mean, the Texans Bills, for what it was worth, the Texans solely had that game until the Bills decided to come back. But I mean, the Texans did win. The only loss is still to the Vikings, which is obviously not a bad loss. The bigger concerning part of that is, Nico Collins was on. I mean, he's wide receiver number 1 in the NFL right now. Like through 5 games, he has 567 yards. And he's now going to be limited. Some sort of hamstring issue, so they're considering him like a week-to-week basis. So losing one of your top receivers probably doesn't help Stroud, but you also have Tank Dell and Stephon Diggs, and the Texans will probably be fine. So they just might need to fine tweak their offense. But the Bills, on the other hand, I don't know anymore, because they put up 41 on Jacksonville, and then they dropped the clunker to the Ravens, and then they dropped this game again. So I don't know what to make of the Bills anymore. I don't know if they're good or if they're just mid.
Well, and notably, Jacksonville got their first win against Indianapolis, which I understand. Like Indianapolis isn't like a big powerhouse this year right now,
but they are with Joe Flacco now.
Well, yeah, I guess that's true. But I mean, even then, like Jacksonville finally got their first win. So this is also kind of that moment where it's still early enough in the season. You could see some weird stuff happen, and like Jacksonville could go on a random run. I don't know about playoffs necessarily. It seems a little far-fetched at this point, but still, it's just we're getting into the NFL's just been weird this year. Like the teams that were supposed to be good are either still good or just haven't shown nearly what you think. So like people are like, oh, the Eagles are supposed to be really good this year. They haven't looked good. The 49ers, oh, they could go back to the Super Bowl. Maybe. And so, I mean,
I think
not
the
to
only for
disparage
sure
Minnesota. I don't think
right.
anybody expected Minnesota to be a wagon as much as they
No.
are this year.
And I mean, I think the only for sure known we know right now is Kansas City is going to be somewhere in that mix. Just even if they lose tonight's game against the Saints, I mean, they're still the Chiefs, and it's still Patrick Mahomes, and it's still Andy Reid. It's just like you can for sure count on them being an AFC finalist, regardless of who was the other one. They're just going to be there. But yeah, that's the Vikings came out of nowhere, and I know I preferenced this to our friends that are Vikings fans too. Is next year, you assume that Sam Darnold continues this run and that he continues this. If he gets into the NFC Championship or even the Super Bowl, what do you do for next year? Because you signed him, if I'm remembering correct, just for like a 1-year deal. He might be a free agent next year. And then you still have JJ McCarthy that's going to be coming off IR next year that you drafted for. So it's like, are you okay with letting Sam Darnold walk? If he does super well this year and he's in MVP consideration talk, and you just hope that JJ McCarthy is healthy enough to kind of lead you after having such a good year with Sam Darnold, or do you kind of keep him around and then you just don't know what to do with JJ at that point? So, and it doesn't have to be answered now. And I know this will probably be a better answer from Nate to get his opinion too, but I'm very intrigued of what the Vikings will do at quarterback.
It does look like you're correct, though, by the way. He did sign a 1-year contract.
Yeah, so he's going to be a free agent next year, and he definitely made more money and demand more money that the Vikings might not be able to offer him, and he can get that from somewhere else. But if you're a Vikings fan and their management, if he gets you this far to the Super Bowl, like how do you let someone like that walk after he just had the season that he had with you? So that's a lot of semantics and definitely a future problem, but it's just like it's an interesting conversation to have too. As now we've got a big sample size of the first 5 games of the Vikings, and they're 5-0.
For sure. All right, Andy, it's time to talk about your team. The one you were so sure wasn't going to pull it off.
Well, it didn't start. It didn't start great. I mean, first drive they gave up a 57-yard touchdown to Brock Bowers, which watching Brock Bowers, he's definitely going to be a problem in the future for our division and just the tight ends in the future.
Because I think I drafted him in our fantasy.
Yeah, he looked really, really good. The issue, obviously, for the Raiders is there's still no quarterback. Even if you believe in Minshew mania, I wouldn't because he's not that good. Denver. And what I've said all year long, and definitely the past 3 weeks, is Denver is going to rely on their defense first, and then just hope that the offense clicks throughout the game and gets better. And that's what happened yesterday. They were staring down the barrel of going down 17-3 until my heart and my soul, my franchise player Pat Surtain, had that 100-yard pick six, and that just turned the momentum the entire way for Denver. Because then after that, Denver scored like 24 unanswered points. And they eventually did beat the Raiders 34-18. But, we picked off Gardner Minshew twice. We got him benched. Then they brought in Aiden O'Connell, who, if you remember from the good old Purdue Big Ten games, that's their backup quarterback. And so we got him benched, and he still threw another pick to Pat Surtain. So the Raiders are not good. Bo Nix did look better yesterday than he has kind of probably since Tampa Bay. Definitely the second half, Denver picked it up a lot. They scored touchdowns, not just settled for field goals, which is I'm always happy about. But and I know the clip is going around of like after one of the timeouts, Bo Nix and Sean Payton were getting into it, yelling at each other, so on and so forth. And I mean, I don't have a problem with it. I definitely like it where my I want my quarterback to, be upfront, be angry with our coach if things aren't going right. Like, hey, this is what I'm hearing. This is what's calling. Like, this is what I want. And Sean Payton said after the game, like, yeah, that's I love Bo. I love the kid. I want to see that competitiveness and that fire out of our guys. So it was just refreshing to see that they were able to pick up a good offensive game after relying on their defense for most of the year. The offense was finally starting to pick up and not sputter anymore. But Pat Surtain definitely is in conversation for Defensive Player of the Year right now, I think. And obviously, it's a very personal bias, but
no, I mean, even with the bias, he's been playing lights out for
yeah,
Denver. That's fair.
And they showed a stat yesterday of through the first 4 games, he shadows the number 1 wide receiver. So he shadowed like Garrett Wilson, DK Metcalf, Mike Evans, George Pickens through the first 4 games, and he's only allowed like 7 catches for 79 yards between those 4 guys and no touchdowns. So it is no surprise that Surtain obviously is paid like one of the highest DBs in the league, and he is one of the best DBs in the league. So he, in my mind right now, is Defensive Player of the Year. And I think they probably do it by conference, so he's probably AFC Defensive Player of the Year right now. But I'm just happy that the offense did finally pick it up in the second half yesterday. They got the running game going. Bo Nix just looked more confident as the game went on, and like I said, the whole yelling thing on the sideline between him and Sean Payton, I don't have an issue with it. I want to see that competitiveness out of our guys. But yeah, it was fun to snap an 8-game losing streak to the Raiders, just like Denver did last year, snapping like a whatever game losing streak to the Chiefs. So, yeah, it was, like you said, Zach, an immaculate weekend for all teams involved in football. And Denver did it by, basically looking absolutely ice fire in their uniforms, which I've always said that they should wear those year round to be their permanent uniforms in their logo, because those uniforms are great.
I'm a fan. I am a huge fan of like the old school.
Like, I think all teams should do it. They go back to like the 90s and 80s uniforms, because those were absolutely awesome.
I want to see the Eagles back in Kelly green.
Yeah,
like forever. Like I'm not even talking like alternates. I'm talking go back
like
to that.
forever. Yeah,
yeah.
I
like Denver's their whole getup was awesome. Yeah. I loved it.
And Seattle's also another one that comes to mind. I love Seattle's like old school Seahawk, like the lighter toned colors that they have and everything. I think that's what they should go back to. But yeah, like all teams should just go back to their old school uniforms.
Yeah, those guys knew what they were doing in the 90s.
Can we all agree that like the Steelers, though, them like Bumblebee uniforms have to be one of the worst uniforms ever created? That or Green Bay's, like, don't they have like a yellow helmet, brown shirt type of uniform? Or is that somebody else?
I would have to look back.
I don't know off the top of my head.
But if you're thinking of the Browns,
as long as whoever made like the Steelers uniforms, as long as they have respectfully passed away.
I Googled it. Yep, I know what you're talking about now. Yeah, those need to be burned.
Yeah, like they look like practice unis.
Yeah, it's like Where's Waldo? Black and white stripes or black and white stripes.
You know what? You got to give the Steelers at least credit though too. They really haven't changed much about their uniform. Like they've been different, but they haven't necessarily changed.
I forgot about those uniforms. Oh god. Yeah, Steelers
I forgot about those.
Go back to those.
Steelers is such a forgettable team, man. Like you just look over them. On to the next.
Yeah, I guess we didn't really talk about the Sunday night game. I fell asleep.
So did I. Unfortunately, I was so tired. I fell asleep.
Second or like a last drive, and I go, oh, okay.
Here you go, Jet. Up to you, man. You got it.
What are we talking about? Hold on.
Sunday the Steelers, the last night's game, the Steelers and the
Zach and I went to bed at halftime, so I don't really know what happened after that until I woke up and saw the notification.
I mean, I didn't watch the game either because, like I said, they're forgettable. I genuinely just don't like the Steelers. Like I don't like watching them. I don't like seeing them do good. I hope they never win another Super Bowl. I hope you guys don't have any Steelers fans because you just lost them. But
Nah, this is
If we
sports
do,
fandom at its best, man.
due to my knowledge.
I mean, if anybody's a Steelers fans, I would recommend for them to reconsider.
Yeah, but it's tough. I mean, I would agree with you.
Exactly.
Just because of Big Ben, but now Big Ben's not there anymore. But that would be my only stipulation.
I will say, basing it entirely on the first half that I did watch, it was the cow. I know I'm biased, but the Cowboys don't look good, and at one point the Steelers looked okay, like they looked decent to start the year, and then all of a sudden they didn't. And now we're at this point where it's like, what are they? And the thing is to Jet's point, where it's like, they're not necessarily forgettable. That's not what I would call them, but I get your point.
Mm-hmm.
They're not necessarily forgettable, but they're just middling. And the thing is, like, that's a Mike Tomlin thing, where it's like they always end the year like 9-8, 8-9. Like, it's what's the stat? Mike Tomlin has never had below a 0.5 or a 50% season or whatever.
Yeah, he's never had a losing season, which is absolutely insane.
Which is insane, but it's also like, okay, but then what have you done in those seasons that haven't been losing?
He just gets to the playoffs and that's it.
And I mean, that is still a sign of a pretty good coach, but like, how far into the distance has he gone? And clearly not very. I think he's got a Super Bowl under his name, doesn't he?
If he does, it had to have been with Big Ben.
I was gonna say, I feel like he's been there forever.
I
mean, like, I feel like so much that he has to have a Super Bowl.
Yes.
Yep, he has a Super Bowl. From when was this? Against the Arizona Cardinals.
2003.
Was that that comeback victory? Like they were down and came back?
I was an assistant coach. Head coach. There we go. Sorry. 2009. Yeah, against the Cardinals.
I was gonna say, actually, not necessarily a comeback. It was almost a comeback from the Cardinals, yeah. Ken Weisenhunt. Holy smokes. There's a name you've heard forever. Holy moly. Anyway, to the point though,
Madden was the broadcaster for that. Oh man.
Rest in peace, my dude.
Yeah, that's a name too.
My favorite John Madden quote will forever be from the video games. The team with the most points at the end usually wins the ball game. Usually wins the ball game. I just want to know.
So much nonchalant.
He says usually wins the ball game.
Yes, usually.
In what case, when the other team scores more, do they not win? Like,
that's the
I've watched football for quite some time. I've never seen a team with less points win the game.
Yes.
I'm just asking the question.
All
right. Well, let's get to I don't know. I'm going to call this the exciting new feature, which it is kind of unfortunate that Nate's not here to be here, but no better time to start than the present. We are actually going to give some picks on this show. We're going to go full deep into the gambling cave here, and we're going to tell you what we believe to be our picks. But we're not going to go crazy. We're not going to go on every game. We don't have that kind of time because everybody's time is precious, and this podcast would be 3.5 hours if we did that. So,
yes.
And from my understanding, I don't know, seems like a 2-hour podcast is about the length that people really want to listen to. So anything longer than that, then you start having people just tune out. So we don't want that.
No.
So to start this off, I say let's all go around and give ourselves what I'm going to call our gimme pick. Not necessarily, and I don't want to call it the gimme pick as in like who's the obvious winner. More just like what we think is a solid bet. What we think is, if you're going to place $10 on a bet, whatever your platform is. No sponsors, by the way, but we're hoping we can get one here. This is the pick that we say would be your solid bet to put money on. I think this is one that you could safely bet, and I think you would maybe get get a return. But first of all, obviously, we're not gambling experts, so please don't take our.
I was just gonna say, big disclaimer here.
We are not gambling experts. We, take our picks with a grain of salt. We don't know anything more than you do. We're just doing this for fun. So please don't come at us. And if you have a gambling problem, I'll put the gambling hotline.
1-800-GAMBLER.
I was gonna say I'll put that in the links in the descriptions of everything. So if you have a gambling problem, make sure to give them a call.
I got them on speed dial. Don't feel bad about it.
Attaboy. So I'll start off with my gimme pick. And again, reminder, gimme pick is not an obvious gimme. It's just what I'm calling it. My gimme pick of the week is going to be kind of a hot take, I think. I think Seattle's going to have a bounce back week on Thursday against San Francisco.
Niners? Okay.
San Francisco looking a little rough. I mean, I think they're going to have a bounce back too, but I think Seattle's really going to take that serious. So I'm taking the Seattle cover, not the cover, the whatever that is. I'm not great with lines, but I think if I look at San Francisco is a 3-point favorite. I could see this being a really close game. I'm taking Seattle.
Okay.
On to you guys.
I'm like stuck between the Falcons and Panthers. That feels just like too easy to throw out there. So I'm gonna go Colts Titans. I'm gonna say Joe Flacco. I'll preference this. I think I'm only picking that because I'm banking on Will Levis still being Will Levis and doing some crazy, inexplicable, weird turnover things that he has done every single week. And Flacco looked great yesterday against the Jags. I know they didn't win, but he looked great. So I think the Colts will bounce back and bank on Will Levis being Will Levis.
All right. I was also going to say Atlanta and Carolina, but kind of like you said, Andy.
That seems too easy.
It just seems like Atlanta should have that. They should have that. But I actually got two picks that I think is going to be a little wild. I think the Jets are actually going to have a kind of a crazy, wild week, and just everything clicks for them in this game. And I think Buffalo is just going to like sleep.
See, I thought
my dude, I love it.
Just a little bit. I think the Jets got it just because like I've seen them play good and I've seen them play really consistent football when they want to. But that last game with 3 interceptions, I also think A-Rod's going to come back, just have like his revenge tour type of thing and just want to ball out.
Right. And to the Jets' defense, I mean, they literally have played probably 2 of the best defenses back-to-back weeks in Denver and Minnesota. So, like, the chances of them playing another top-tier defense in the future, I haven't looked at the rest of their schedule, but, like, the fact that they played 2 of the best ones back-to-back weeks is a really tough swing for them.
I don't know. I just really like the Jets there. I don't know. I think the Bills are going to have, like, one of those years where they're supposed to be pretty good and they have their games, but I don't know. Their lows just look really low. And seeing Josh Allen's stat line from last game was not a good idea.
No.
So
what was he like? 9
for 30?
Yeah. And the Texans defense is not great either. I mean, considering, again, this is Minnesota, but I mean, Minnesota carved up the Texans. So it's like the Texans don't have a fantastic defense either, even though D'Amico Ryans is a defensive guy. They're kind of average this year, and they're relying on, CJ Stroud and that offense to be good. But yeah, you're right. It's the Bills just have not looked what we thought. I think we were all on the high horse after that 41-10 slacking of Jacksonville. We're like, are the Bills good or is just Jacksonville bad? Well, we figured out that Jacksonville's just bad.
They're pretty trash.
Yeah,
they're pretty bad.
And the Bills just might be a step, getting closer to that at this point.
It's crazy, man. I love that pick. That's a hairy pick, and I love it.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying.
Panthers it'd be Panthers anybody if we just want to avoid that pick every week. That seems like the gimme pick.
I don't know, man, because like Carolina did have a couple games there, not
They
this
did.
last week, but they did have that game where they won, where they just looked on fire. And I'm not making a red hair Andy Dalton joke there. I'm
But you could be.
saying, I mean, I could. I'm saying I could be. But what I'm saying is like, I think with the fact that they benched Bryce Young, I think that the Panthers, I think they're still bad, but I don't think they're as bad. And also, this is the NFL. A 6-point
Yes.
spread is a lot.
Oh yeah.
Which, with that said, now we're gonna go to our sick pick of the week. So I don't necessarily want sickos. I don't want the sickos committee to come after us. That's probably not a good thing.
I love you.
So in this
sponsor us,
case, we're
that'd
gonna
be cool
call it
too.
the sick. We're just gonna call it the sick pick, with the idea being it's a pick that, as we're saying it, like, man, I don't know about this one, but I don't even love it as I'm about to say it, but I'm gonna throw it out there. I think Cleveland keeps it close with
See,
Philadelphia.
Zach, I was looking at that too, and I didn't want to do it because of you.
No, 8.5. That's a lot. That's a lot in the NFL. And I understand how bad the Browns have looked, and they have committed to Deshaun Watson being the starter.
Yeah, and Stefanski said we're not changing the quarterback, and I'm like, why would you not?
I fear that they can't. I think there's something within his contract that they can't. I understand the Browns have not looked good at all, but neither have the Eagles.
Since they were like starting to turn around as a franchise from like those consecutive years of going 1-16 or 0-17, then like Baker arrives and then they start to turn the whole franchise around, and you're like,
and then they trade Baker.
Yes, and I'm like, it's not like people are cheering for the Browns, but it's like you finally see a team that can like dig itself out of a hole and start to be consistently, average every year rather than being the bottom of the league. And then now they're reverting back because they won't get rid of Deshaun.
But I mean, I don't know. I see 8.5 point line. Eagles have not lived up to any kind of, they were supposed to get, I mean, I understand they were supposed to get smoked by the Saints. They didn't.
Mm-hmm.
It just happens. I mean, there's not much you can do about it. But to a certain point, it is that to me is the sick pick of the week, because Philly plays down to their competition. At least the last couple of years they have.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't want to say that I think that the Eagles will lose that game.
Mm-hmm.
However, I think that is the key. I think that's going to be a key moment coming off of a bye week for the Eagles. They should be rested. In theory, AJ Brown might be back. I would assume Devontae Smith might be back, so our offense should be at mostly full health. I guess I don't know. I haven't really kept up on the injury reports.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I will as the week goes on, but it's just, I don't know. There's one other pick I could have, but maybe you guys are going to have it, so I'm going to leave them out there. But that's my pick. So I'm going to give it to you, Andy.
The only reason I want to choose the London game is because, one, those are not great teams playing yet. Although right now the spread's only like a 2-point spread, so it's pretty much a push in terms of that game being a sicko game. But I might just have to lean into it and just hope that the early morning London game is just a true sicko game, because I don't think first off, the Bengals Giants being Sunday Night Football this week, gross. Although the Giants winning probably did help that cause a little bit, but
but I mean, at the same time, I feel like Cincinnati should take that one.
They should.
They should take that one. The Giants, even though they won, they just don't look. But again, it's week by week. It's the NFL, man. Like, I don't know.
Right.
It's tough. It's so tough.
But I'll probably take the Jags Bears as a sicko game, because that's essentially a push. It's the Bears -2 right now, but you're talking less than a field goal game. So
yeah, that's gonna be a like a very close game.
Yeah, not because it's gonna be a shootout. It's because both teams are bad.
All right, Sir Jet, to kick off not only just having a guest, but also the new segment of us picking. What you got for your sick pick?
For my sick pick, I'm sitting here looking at Houston and New England.
Okay.
I have a feeling Houston's going to score a little bit more than 7 points. I just think New England doesn't really have much to offer this year. It just doesn't look like they're really bringing a game. So I just kind of like the Texans, how they're rolling. I feel like things kind of are clicking, maybe not fully yet, but like they're getting it figured out. So I could see that game being 10 points, maybe 2 scores even.
Okay. I like that.
Love it.
Roll Houston.
That was going to be the other pick that I was going to pick. I was between that and the Eagles. I was so tight. I was like, but you know, I even as an Eagles fan, I'm just similar to how it is with the Huskers. Always bet against them as of late.
Except this year.
Well,
Nebraska is 5-1 in accordance with their record of against.
I was just saying in recent years, not necessarily this year. I'm just saying in general.
Yes, in recent years. But you want to pick Nebraska on the spread this year because they are 5-1, which coincides with their record this year of what they are against the spread.
All right, I'll give it that. All right, boys. Well, we've made it through the NFL slate.
Let's go to the
hopefully
what this
everybody
last college
enjoyed.
weekend was.
Yeah, let's hope everybody enjoyed the edition of picks because those are probably here to stay.
I like it.
And again, we'll just preface: we are not gambling experts, so
1-800-GAMBLER if you have a problem.
1-800-GAMBLER.
Not all right, better, moving. I had money picks. All I'm gonna say. I had money picks.
Well, I mean, and he is a guest, so if his picks fail, we just know never to get it back on.
Shucks.
Anyway, let's move on to college football, which NFL was crazy. College football was arguably crazier. College football had, in my opinion, one of the greatest weekends in years.
Absolutely insane.
I mean, okay, so we'll get to Nebraska eventually. Everybody that listens to this knows that everybody that comes on here is probably going to be, if not everybody that comes on here, 80% of people that come on to this podcast, if we keep doing the guest thing, are going to be huge Husker fans.
Yes.
But let's just start with the actual biggest game. I love the Huskers. They're coming, but it has to be Alabama and Vandy.
Oh,
right?
Absolutely.
It
absolutely
has
gotta
to be.
I mean, for Vanderbilt to beat Alabama for the first time since 1984, absolutely insane.
Officially now, what is it? They're 1-60 against top.
Yeah.
Was it top 5?
Yeah.
Jet was the one that I know Jet texted me.
Yeah.
What was that stat?
The little blip popped up saying 0 for 60 against top 5 schools, like in their school
Top
history. 5. So not only a top 5 school that they beat, the fucking number 1 school that they beat.
Now
that's just insane.
And obviously, you know what we love this college football fans is the theatrics that happened afterwards. But I mean, the game itself, just Alabama comes in, you know, obviously heavy favorites after, you know, being ranked number 1 after, you know, their win against Georgia last week. And then they just they didn't put the game away and they just kept Vandy in the game. And it was a great back and forth, but I mean, that entire game, you're just, you know, Vandy goes up 13-0 and you're like, okay, are they going to be able to hold on? Then Bama scores and you're like, all right, you know, Bama's going to do kind of what they did last week is they're going to kind of go back and forth, but then they'll pick it up at the end. But then Vandy just kept pulling away and you're like, is this really going to happen? And then it did. And you're like, this is why we love college football.
Dude, not only that, the last 5 years of Vanderbilt football has been, to put it bluntly, bad.
Mm-hmm.
And then this is why things like this are why I'm a huge proponent of things like NIL and paying your players, because no one in their right mind going in. If we would have started this segment last week after Nebraska beat Purdue, if we would have started this whole bet segment or pick segment, we would have said, nah, Alabama's got Vanderbilt. we would have probably said it would be a closer game because I think it was like a 20-point spread or something like that. It was ridiculous. And everybody, everybody would have said, no, Alabama's got it. They just came off a win against Georgia and they became the number 1 team, which also arguably didn't know if that was deserved. Clearly not deserved at this point. So, I mean, the point being is that everybody thought that Alabama was going to be the team that would just smoke, like they would win out, right? Easy. And then Vanderbilt won. Like, what? And not only that, Vanderbilt also got votes in the top AP poll. Well deserved. Do I think they should be top 25? Probably not.
But even
then, no, not at 3-2. But the point being is like they played well enough to get votes. Got to admit that's impressive.
Yeah,
hasn't been a Vanderbilt team that's done that for a while. So honestly, shocking. What a fantastic game.
It was, and obviously, the theatrics afterwards. When I know we were all talking about, we were all sending tweets about it. If you pinpoint where Vanderbilt Stadium is to the Tennessee River, that is a 53-mile walk. Those fans took that goalpost and walked it at least almost close to an hour downtown Broadway in Nashville. And all the camera footage you see is just like, oh, it's, Broadway, all these bars that are lit up and everything. And then you just see this crowd of people and this yellow goalpost just going down Broadway, ready to throw it in the river.
That was like the coolest thing to see out of all of it, though. Like, Vandy fans, like, probably half the people that went to the game were called crazy. Like, why wouldn't you just stay home? But like they had construction in their end zone.
Yes.
And like Alabama still lost. It's like the biggest underdog story ever.
Yeah.
And I was watching it.
Like renovating their stadium, and they just took the goalpost and just said, "Now we'll fix this later."
Yeah, well, you can fix that while you're at it too. Like, I don't blame them. I do the same shit. You just beat number 1 Alabama. But like I was flipping between both games, Nebraska game and Vandy game. Vandy kind of had my attention. Like, I was kind of watching Nebraska on my phone. I'm like, shit, these guys might actually do it. Texting Zach, I'm like, shit, I'm watching history. Like, what the hell is this?
Yeah, I immediately, as soon as the Nebraska game ended, I immediately went to the Vandy game.
Yeah.
When it comes to the Nebraska games, those are always full screen on my TV.
Right.
I don't do the 4-way split. But when I saw that was going on, I was reversed. So my Nebraska game was on my TV. Then I had the Vandy game kind of pulled up on my phone, just watching the ESPN app, not necessarily the game itself. And I'm just sitting there like, "Yo, what? They're doing this. They're still doing this. What is going on?"
Right.
And then I kept saying, "I was like, no, Alabama's going to get it together." It's just crazy. It's just crazy. It's like,
and what makes college football great is you would never get something like that to happen in the NFL, no matter what crazy upset, big play to win the game type thing to happen in the NFL. Like, nothing would equivocate what happened on Saturday in Vanderbilt to like an NFL level at any point at all. And that's just what makes college football so much better is, I mean, yes, NFL is about the fans and everything, but like college fandom is just so much more of a niche than the NFL is. And I mean, it's like Vandy is just a perfect example because yes, they are an SEC school, but it's not like they are obviously not a powerhouse in football. And you get a small community school like that, and yeah, I know they're located in Nashville, but nobody in Nashville is like, oh, this is our college hometown. Like this is what we got to rep. Like, no, Nashville is Nashville. That's like having, UCLA being the college in Los Angeles. It's like, nobody really cares because it's LA, but you don't see this type of thing in the NFL. And that's what makes college football just so much better is you get these types of reactions after wins and just fans doing absolutely insane stuff. Like, taking a goalpost an hour down the streets to throw it in a river.
All of the videos from that were incredible too, where you just see a bunch of, police vehicles coming down. And like, hey, we're that's what they were. Yeah, they were 100% escorting people. Like, we know what they're doing. We're escorting these people.
Right.
Like, and then you just see all these people that are driving. Like, obviously not everybody in the world is a football fan. So you just know there had to be at least 3 or 4 cars in that lineup somewhere that are just like, what is going on?
I like to imagine that there were probably, bachelorette parties or just parties in Nashville that were like not sports fans, and they emerge out of the bars and they just see this crowd of people walking a goalpost down Broadway Street.
So, do you think at places like that, when stuff like that happens, do you think bars like get like a special permission? I'm sure they don't. But like, do you think that like, oh, hey,
I
it's
would.
Saturday night, all of a sudden Vanderbilt just pulled off the biggest upset in school history freaking ever, at least in recent memory, in the last 40 years, basically. Do they get to just stay open all night? Just be like, just sell your heart out. I'm sure they
would.
don't, but like, what? Take the fine.
So
Go
if-
for it,
wait,
man.
If I'm a bartender, I'm giving out free drinks. Like, you got to. like Vandy community deserves it. Everyone deserves a free drink. Every one of the players deserves at least some special attention from their lovers. Because Jesus Christ, they deserve everything, man. Like, y'all did the impossible, and props to y'all.
And I know we just spent like 10 minutes on one upset among
there were like 8 more.
among the plethora of other ones that happened too. I mean, you have Arkansas pull up the upset against Tennessee, and for the longest time I thought like it's going to be Tennessee and Georgia or Tennessee and Texas for the SEC championship, and now it's just Texas at the moment. It's Arkansas, upsets Tennessee at home. Then you have, Miami and Cal was not an upset, but like I don't know how Cal blew that game. They were up 35-10 and you lost 35-38.
That was one that was similar to last night
39.
where I fell asleep like at halftime at that. I was
100%.
for whatever reason just
I went to
sad
bed when it was
Saturday.
28-10 and I'm like, Cal's got this. And then I wake up and it's 39-38 Miami win. I'm like, what happened? That should have been an upset. It wasn't, but they were darn near close. And then Missouri, I don't know what happened. I do like they were probably overrated to begin with, but like I didn't think they were a 31-point loss overrated to A&M.
31 points, yeah.
They just got stomped at College Station, and there's no other way to put that. And then you have the 2 Big Ten upsets too.
Now, to fulfill my Mr. Casual idea, like Missouri, they were 10. What did they start the year at? Was it lower, or what did they start at 10?
Close to the top 5. I thought they might have jumped up to 6 at one point, but
like how? Like, did they just have like a baller year last year? Like
they did really well at the end of last
year. They did well at the end of the year, and it's just all the preseason hype that they take into account too.
I mean, I guess, but like
they went into week 1, just so we're all aware, they went into week 1 against Murray State at number 11. So they were top 15.
That's just insane.
Because didn't Missouri finish like top 10 last year?
That might be what I'm thinking of. They might have finished 6th last year. I know at some point they were close to it.
Really?
They were 6th.
Yeah, they were good.
I completely forgot that.
And I mean, they were just a second thought because when you're in the SEC with Alabama and Georgia and Tennessee that have these good runs every year, and then all of a sudden another lesser school makes a run, you just you're the afterthought against those powerhouse of schools.
Yeah.
But then you have the 2 Big Ten upsets. Michigan gets Washington gets their revenge on Michigan last year, and obviously we know it's not the same Michigan game or Michigan team, but Michigan. They just went to wherever Spokane and just didn't play well against Washington. And we knew Washington was better. We didn't. I mean, that Rutgers loss, they probably shouldn't have lost Rutgers, but they did. But the bigger story is USC now is a question mark. They went up to Minneapolis and lost on PJ Fleck's daring 4th goal try that almost did not work.
I was so conflicted that game too because I love the state of Minnesota. I think Minnesota's got a lot of cool stuff in it. I hate the football team from Minnesota. However, spoiler alert again, Nebraska did finally beat Kalliak Manis, so I feel like a little bit of revenge
on the 3rd attempt.
on the third attempt. I feel like Nebraska finally got their revenge. It took them forever to get there, and again, we're getting there. But
we'll get there.
Yeah,
but
that I was so conflicted because I also hate USC.
yeah,
so it was nice to see them lose. But
yeah,
man,
and they were driving on that last drive after Minnesota scored, and I go, oh, Minnesota's not good on defense. USC might score and tie this thing up, and then Miller just, I don't know where he was thrown to in that end zone. Probably didn't see the second safety, but that interception was pretty cool too.
Yeah, that was something. I mean, watching that game was just crazy. Or at least the end of it. It was just like, yep, okay, it looks like you, and because USC started that drive, like you said, they looked like they were gonna
score a touchdown.
They were just able to pass pretty much at will. There was, I think, maybe 2 plays where it's like, that it didn't work.
Yeah.
The play was there, it just didn't work out. It happens. And then as soon as that interception was thrown, I was like, yeah. No, I was so conflicted. I was like, man, no, I didn't want.
It's upset, but no, PJ Fleck.
It's like, no, I don't want PJ Fleck to have any success.
Yeah, it was a bloodbath of upsets this week in college football, and the slate only gets better the next couple weeks.
That's gonna be great.
I mean, we know that Nebraska is on a bye idle week this week, but I mean, you have Oregon. Yeah, you have the Red River rivalry this weekend of Texas and Oklahoma. You have, I know USC's not ranked anymore, but Penn State USC probably will still be a really good game. What else? Ohio State, Oregon, obviously, 2 versus 3 matchup there, which is going to be,
that'll be fun.
That's going to be, obviously the winner of that game is going to be leading the Big Ten in terms of the standings at the moment. But I mean, it'll be Oregon's first real test against, a Big Ten opponent that's actually a conference game and not like a playoff game there. You have Ole Miss and LSU, another great matchup there. And then, I know we don't want to talk about Colorado, but Kansas State against Colorado. Colorado was 4-1 still, and they're not ranked, but that's probably going to be on upset alert for Kansas State too, especially since that game's in Boulder. But Colorado, again, I know we don't want to cheer for them, but they haven't looked bad since they lost to Nebraska, and I think it's just more calming to us knowing that we care, like we kicked them.
we shellacked them.
Yeah. It wasn't like a close, and the games they have scored like 30-ish points after they beat us. They 28 to Colorado State, 38 against Baylor, 48 against UCF. So the fact that Nebraska held them to 10 points is, a testament to, one, how good our defense was, but two, just Colorado is still a high-powered offense, and we shellacked them. So yeah, it's a loaded slate this week, and a very good week for Nebraska to have a bye. So I could do absolutely nothing but watch those games.
Well, speaking of the old Nebraska team,
yes,
unless Jet's got something.
I mean, not yet. It was about Nebraska. What you got?
That was it. Let's get to the Nebraska games.
All right.
Let's get to our bread and butter of what we know best. And
all
it's
right,
this football team.
The Nebraska Cornhuskers, your Nebraska Cornhuskers, if you're a Husker fan, played at home against Rutgers and ended up winning the game in Big Ten West fashion, as we all love, 14-7.
We did a 1-score game win.
We
can get the monkey off our back.
Finally won the 1-score game.
Who would have thought?
I'm not going to say that we got the monkey off the back, but that is the start to doing it, where it's like, we went up, overall, Nebraska went up against a well-coached Greg Schiano team.
Oh, yeah. And
at times, especially in that fourth quarter, there were multiple times where I'm like, I don't like this. I don't like this. I don't like this. My overall synopsis being, before we get detailed, is offense had probably the worst showing on the team. Well,
I'd say I would. Yeah, we'll get in. Yes, it was, and by terms of what we know this offense to be, their worst performance.
Yeah,
I would say Dylan contributed to more to that than the run game wasn't spectacular by any means, but it wasn't the worst run game I've seen either from Nebraska this season.
Dylan just looked like out of sorts. It seemed like it wasn't his confident self anymore. Like he was second guessing shit way too much.
And you look at the box score and it's like, oh, Nebraska only ran for 97 yards. Well, if you remember that fun little stat that college football loves to do, and they take sack yards into account for your rushing yards, which is insanely stupid because the NFL doesn't do that. Dylan had negative 32 rushing yards, but because he was sacked. So if you take that equation out, Nebraska as a whole, between the four guys that did run the ball, ran for 135 yards. So sack adjusted yardage, Nebraska still eclipsed 100 yards on the ground. It's just the NCAA does that fun thing where they take into account sacks as rushing yards, which again, very stupid. But
yeah, I think weather played a lot into it.
Oh yeah.
It was definitely very much a Big Ten West game. It was an ugly game. It was a ground and pound type game. For the most part. There were a couple times where, the teams aired it out and it worked. But I mean, you didn't see a whole lot of passing in terms of the big type of, you didn't see a team that just solely relied on it because they couldn't. The wind being a huge factor. Special teams in Nebraska continues to rate F-. Except for Brian Buschini, absolutely deserved the game
Brian
ball.
Buschini.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah, we might need to have a sit down conversation with the special teams.
Well, I will say this for constant listeners of the Sportsball podcast. Thanks to the Nebraska game, we're bringing back another fun segment that we will be talking about. So,
you just fire it up now.
Well, I think we should get through the game first, and then we'll go from there.
Okay.
Yeah, I'm going to let you lead off with the offense.
Yes. So, Dylan, I mean, yes, a lot of the game was very much factored into what the weather was doing, whether that weather, words that go together. The biggest thing besides the heat was like the 30 to 40 mile per hour gusts out of the wind that entirety of the game, and it obviously played a factor into Nebraska, how they chose to receive the kickoff, what they deferred to, how they ran the ball, passed the ball, all that sorts. And as the game went on, and I don't know if we'll ever get confirmation of this, I don't know if Dylan, just for the amount of sacks that he took, if he just got a little hobbled as the game went on, it just wasn't as sharp. Because we've kept him clean pretty much most of the year, but he did take some sacks and some hits that game. So I'm wondering if, he started to get hit a little bit more, started to get a little frazzled, and that certainly plays into it. The wind obviously certainly plays into, Nebraska not taking as many long shots, being conservative with the screens, short yardage passes, all of that. Passing obviously could have been better. From what I saw, the receivers, I didn't think had their best game. Obviously, Nayor didn't record. He recorded. I don't even think he recorded a catch, actually. Ramir and Jacory and Fedoni are your leading receivers at 3 catches each. But I mean, it's, Banks had one solid game that did set him up for a touchdown. But I mean, Banks and Nayor, your 2 top guys, are quiet that game. That obviously plays a factor, and Dylan not having his best game does play a huge factor into that. But run game wasn't terrible. I'm not saying it was great by any means. It wasn't the worst, but it wasn't the best that Nebraska has seen. And I don't know if the issue is the running backs or if it's now the run blocking, because certainly we know what we can get. Like we have a good enough sample size to know what we get out of Dondell, what we get out of Ramir, what we get out of Emmett. Emmett definitely is your shifty, side to side, can hit the hole when he gets speed type running back. Dondell is obviously just run into anybody he sees, contact type runner. And Ramir definitely has speed, but he's definitely has been used more of a passing back. So I don't know if the Nebraska run game issue is the run blocking or if it's the running backs not being patient enough to kind of wait and see what their holes. Because if you see what Manangai for Rutgers, I mean, those first quarter runs that he had, he would bounce off a guy and then he'd see the hole and hit the hole, or he'd reverse back to the other side of the field and hit the hole. And I don't I don't think Nebraska running backs have that right now, is they don't have the patience to sit back and wait for the hole to open up and then hit their hole when the blocking opens up, or if there's just no blocking at all and there's no hole to begin with. So that is the baffling thing. And obviously I know people are going to be concerned of like, oh, the sky's falling, the offense didn't look good at all. What are we going to do going forward? I still think it's going to be fine. You have a couple weeks now to reset on the offense to kind of clean up the things that you saw from the first half of the season. You still have Dylan. If he's not banged up, he just had a true freshman type game where he did look like a rookie quarterback essentially out there. And the fact that it happened 6 games into the season and not the first 3 games, and the whole sky would have been fallen by that point. I mean, the law of averages would say at some point Dylan was going to have that type of game. And it happened on a game where our defense was really the outlier and really helped us win that game. So if you're going to have any sort of outlier game for Dylan, that was probably the game to have it, is where the defense can help you win those games. So yeah, offense has some things to pick it up, but it's, for all the special teams that happened on Saturday, the second half, I can't really blame it on the offense either, because there were, I think, 2 drives where they didn't start within their own 2-yard, like they're within their own 5-yard line. I mean, Rutgers special teams drilled us within, starting at the 2-3 yard line. I think 3 of those drives in the second half. So as an offense, you're already limited of what you can run in those types of situations. And it just kind of compounded to the offense not being able to go because they just never started with great field position in the second half. So a lot of it is that too, but I still think the offense is going to be fine. I'm not ready to throw in the towel like, oh, I'm panicking. I mean, as much as we gave Satterfield crap last year, and I've said this time and time again, if we had a competent quarterback last year, we would have seen what Satterfield was going to be like as a play caller. There is not a world in any universe Satterfield wanted to run a quarterback option the entire game last year, or like the entire year last year. What we've seen him run with Dylan, with these fakes with Barney Bonner, there's a lot of pre-snap motion. These that trick, not really a trick play, but just the fake handoffs on that Ramir screen that went for like 40 yards. That's what like Satterfield wants to do. He wants to get creative, and you can get creative with Dylan and run those types of plays. So Satterfield has not had like I thought like he was really good that game.
Satterfield is not really good problem this year.
No, he's not.
Now, granted, there was some questionable play calling there at the end where it's like, hey,
yeah,
like you should try to run the ball a little bit more to try to kill some clock.
Yes.
When instead it was pass, punt in those situations. But like to your point, where when you're starting in the 3, and the other thing that it needs to be credited is that Rutgers has a really good run defense.
They do,
or at least they did at this point. I mean, they looking back at like who they played so far, it's not like they've necessarily played world beaters. But I think Nebraska was probably the first. Well, Washington was up there, I guess, but Washington isn't really known for their running attack.
No, they are not.
Whereas Nebraska, I think Nebraska has a pretty balanced offense right now, but probably would have relied, especially with all the wind, like would have definitely relied more on the run. And they shut down the run really well. No. Do I think we looked pretty off? Yeah. But I think the bye week comes at a perfect time where, the offense looked off. But again, I think Rule at one point said that they were saying that they were experiencing 30 mile an hour winds on the field just because of the bowl effect and everything. It's just like, I mean, that's going to make running an offense hard.
Right.
To your point, Satterfield's not the issue. Some questionable play calling, but on the flip side, if things would have worked, nobody would have been arguing.
That Janiyah Bonner touchdown. But the creative thing about that was the past couple weeks, Nebraska's really been running heavy with the Ja'Cory Barney jet sweep. And so that play, you had Ja'Cory, doing the pre-snap motion. He sets on one side, he gets in motion, he goes to the other. You're thinking, all right, this is an easy jet sweep to Barney. It's a fake to him, and then you get it to Ja'Cory Barney on the other side, come in, and he just follows Barney as the lead blocker, and then he scores. So I mean, it's things like that where Satterfield just kind of reaches into that bag of his tricks and he's like, let's just throw this out there, see what happens, and it works. So he's definitely not the problem. And yeah, like you said, Dylan had an off game. It was gonna happen at some point.
Dylan played like a freshman QB.
Yeah, and that interception he threw, 100% on him. I mean, he just
100% a freshman
straight up
mistake.
did not see the linebacker and safety coming in there.
And on the flip side, just like your tag said when we started, we don't apologize for wins.
We do not.
And the other thing to remember, and then I think we'll get to Jet because you got to hear his thoughts too on the offense, is that every Nebraska team in the past, well, maybe not last year's. Last year's would have been kind of an interesting case, but years prior, that same Nebraska team that we saw go out on the field would have lost something. Once Rutgers scored their touchdown to make it 7-14, that's when we would have started to see the wheels fall off. And getting before we get to the defense, obviously being, in my opinion, the MVP. Well, Brian Buschini being the MVP of the game, but the defense being the absolute MVP unit of the game for us. We're seeing a different Nebraska team, and the problem is we're just, as fans, we're frustrated because we know how this has gone. So that fourth quarter was the most frustrating fourth quarter that we've seen this year so far, for sure, because we knew how it was going to end, and somehow the team itself kept it together offensively, at least entirely, in my opinion. They were able to keep it together and pull off the win. And with that, what do you got, Jet, on the offense?
Offensively, we looked like we did in the past, in my opinion. It was kind of like you guys have been saying, like, it just seemed like we couldn't get anything going our way, kind of shooting ourselves, like, not in the foot, but almost in the foot, because we just 2 steps forward, a few steps back. But Andy made a good point that I didn't think about. They just punted us back far enough where we couldn't really start with anything good. By the time you get to midfield, you're already down 7-8 plays, so you're already getting fatigued. So it's like, what can you do? But I was happy to see that we stuck with it. I was happy that we stayed in it and kept playing. Like, it was ugly, but we stayed in it, did what we could. I'm not mad at any of the play calls, really. I think we should give Buschini fucking MVP. Bro got hurt in the first punt and made a fucking first down pass and punted them within their own territory pretty consistently. With an injury just on top of that is crazy. So, yeah, Dylan, few mistakes, but he's just young. I still don't hate the kid. I'm still sipping the Kool-Aid. I think we're gonna have a pretty good year still.
Yeah. I mean, you look just the second half drive charts for Nebraska. They started at the 2-yard line, 2-yard line, 20-yard line, 3-yard line, 29-yard line, and then the 26-yard line where they did the kneel down.
Just like, what can you do?
It's when you start that, I mean, what, 3 of those drives are within your own 5-yard line. And so that probably averages out to like what, the 10, 12-yard line. If you add up all those drives, I mean, that's probably a bad way to start your entire, like, to average your entire second half, is you start like pretty much at an average of less than 15 yards.
Like, so it's a long drive every time. Like, shit. I guess that's just props to Rutgers, though. Like, good special teams play on their part.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the whole game.
Their special teams is, I think, one of the top in the Big Ten. So
yeah, it wasn't Wendy. He made that kick. That's for sure.
It's just, it's Nebraska just, I mean, and that's what the Big Ten is. It's, special teams that Nebraska needs to figure it out real quick. But yeah, when you start that backed up every single drive, it's hard to sustain drives if you don't have the big chunk plays or you don't get first downs. You can't do it. And Nebraska, punted a lot and got burned on them.
Especially when we ain't clicking. It's like, well, fuck.
Yeah.
Like, like, what do you even do now? Obviously, our 12 go-tos didn't work. So what do we do now?
Well, and that's the other thing too, is like when the team, hot take here, but like when the team looked good, you could tell that they were executing well and it was working for them. So it's not like the offensive plays weren't working. It's just, I think it came down to not only the wind, it was hot. It was mad hot on the field. I think they said that there was like 108 degrees on that field.
Yeah.
So again, and even Rule said in his press conference today, he's like, not making excuses, but there are factors that led to why the team didn't look as good. And he says, we need to fix that, which the fact he even acknowledged things like that, specifically the wind was the one he talked about where and then the drive starting at the 3-yard line or the 8-yard line or whatever. He's like, not making the excuse. That's just what happens. We need to figure out how to get better about that. But that does add up and it makes it tough. So it's, the offense sputtered. I think this is the first game where we officially can be like, the offense really didn't look great the whole game. They had moments, and those moments were really great when it worked out because it got us 14 points. And to be fair, the offense technically, ended up winning us the game because they scored more points than the defense, than Rutgers. Sorry. But still, I mean, like you said, Andy, and Jet, to your point as well, I don't think we need to be worried because now we got a bye, so we get a whole extra week of rest to especially go into Indiana, ranked Indiana.
Big noon kickoff, Indiana.
So that's going to be fun. We'll get to that here as part of our pick segment. But I think now it'd be time to move on to defense, which I'm going to be honest, really no notes. I mean, of course, everybody's going to be like, oh, what about the one they almost gave up? Shouldn't have happened because it should have been a false start, but they didn't call it. So.
Nebraska caught an incredibly huge break on that drop catch, which,
yes,
it happens, but sometimes you can be too wide open,
Well, both things did happen. He was way too wide open because who was it that missed it? That missed the coverage there?
The cornerback?
Yes.
Oh, I'd have to look back at it again. It either probably
Number
was
3.
Yeah, I don't know because he came in because Tommy Hill did start the game, but obviously they were only going to play him as much as the pain allowed him to play. So whoever that was probably came in for Tommy Hill, but yeah, he just at first I thought it was like a PI because the defender pushed him down, and I go, oh no, he just straight up fell. Trying to cover him.
Wasn't it Buford?
Oh, he might be 3. Yeah,
I'm pretty sure it was him.
Yeah. Well, when you go back and look at the play, it was.
Yeah, it is Buford.
He tripped.
Yeah.
Which still, I'm betting coaching is going to get on him this week about it. But I mean, the point being is that if you go back and watch that play, I guess I don't know. I'm not a referee, but I'm 99% positive there should have been a false start on that play. If it wasn't a false start, maybe it was a delay of game. That was the other thing. It seemed like there were so many moments where their play clock would run down. And I know the TV is a little different than what's actually on the field. I understand that. But there were multiple times where I'm like, that play clock has hit 0 for 2 seconds now. I feel like it's not that far off. And I'm not trying to turn this into the refs are out to get Nebraska. This kind of is just an overall point about football this year. Refereeing has been awful.
Been really bad this year.
Like, I know everybody loves to complain about the refs, but holy cow, this year has just been bad. Because then
they were bad, yeah.
Like Nebraska defense outside of like those things, or like the other, I know this is more special teams, but what should have been targeting that wasn't targeting, ridiculous. Absolutely ridiculous. So I don't know. Anyway, I really don't have any notes for the defense. The defense finally, I think, stepped up and did what they were asked to do. Yeah, they gave up a little bit more in certain cases where I was hoping they would hold them a little more, but kind of to be expected when our offense wasn't doing anything. I figured they were gassed. But they stepped up to the challenge, and the defense absolutely was the MVP unit of the game for Nebraska. By far.
Them and Buschini. I mean, CJ or Sierra Wright, I think is how you say his name.
Yep.
The USC transfer has absolutely stepped up since Tommy's been kind of dealing with this plantar fasciitis injury. So he obviously had a pick. I mean, he had a couple big pass breakups too. He has been kind of the next mentality guy up, and he has certainly stepped up and played super well. He's not all that tall, so I mean, he definitely has to work against the other receivers, but he's He had a key interception that didn't amount to much at the end of the half, but Rutgers was driving at the end of the first half. So that was a huge turnover there, and did win us the turnover battle at that point. So he stepped up, and I was, after the Illinois game, I was a little worried about the defense at that point, because that was a game that, certainly Illinois exposed kind of all of our weaknesses on defense. So, and I didn't know how much of the Purdue game I was going to take away either, because as we found out, Purdue is really bad this year. They're Nebraska, again, still should have won that game 45-10, but what they did against Wisconsin was not good. So they're bad. So this was kind of the game where, like, okay, was the Illinois game a fluke? And I believe that now at this point is, they just had a bad game against Illinois, and that's it. And that's not what this defense is. They certainly balled out with 4 sacks on Saturday. And, James Williams is kind of being the up and coming big dog of the year on the defensive line.
Well, that was going to be my other vote for if we had to pick like a defensive MVP, James Williams.
Because
just listening to him talk after that whole game, though, was incredible.
Nobody has said anything about what he's gone through or what his story is. Everybody keeps saying, like, oh, if you knew this guy's background and knew his story, you would know that, like, this is such a big moment for him. Nobody's really said anything about it. So I'm hoping, like, the Chasing 3 doc that comes out sometime this week will probably have more background on that. But
even if it doesn't, I'm 100% here for when he does finally, because I feel like it's 100% his story to tell. So if it is part of that doc, great. I really do hope, though, that here's something about it, because the snippets that we've gotten all sound very good. Because the long and short of it is, basically, for those that don't know, is that James Williams basically has committed to calling Terrence Knighton, his coach, his position coach, basically his father figure. And so just like listening to him talk, and then you like they were showing him on the sideline after he got the sack to win the game. Just him, he was just like, he was crying. He was so happy. It was such a cool thing. But to that same point, I think I texted you and Nate about it, Andy. It was like, I was like, I love seeing our players so emotional, because not only was he emotional, the entire rest of the defense is sitting there just hyping him up. I'm like, this is what we've needed. You haven't seen that the past few years.
And he's just another key piece, and because you have Big Ass Ty, you have the Polar Bear, you have Jamari Butler. So it's like, who's going to be that other guy that's going to come in when you need to rotate one of those guys out. And James Williams is certainly that key position there. And to the defensive's credit, they did figure out Rutgers as the game went on with that running game. My question is, why did Rutgers stop running the ball?
Not only why did they stop running the ball, why did they stop giving it to Monangai?
Monangai had 64 yards at the first quarter. He finished with 78 yards.
Like, why did they not?
Why did they
not keep feeding him?
He was averaging probably like almost to that point 10 yards a carry in that first quarter or close to it.
He finished the game averaging 4.1.
And they said, we're going to put the game in Manis's arm with the wind.
I was consistently keeping track of that boy's like throwing percentage. I was at like 26%, and that's god awful. I don't know when you just pull, throw the white flag, shit. Give it back to what's been working.
Yeah. That part I'm still very much baffled by. Monangai finished with 78 yards, 4 yards a carry, but you consider that he had 64 of those yards in the first quarter when they were moving the ball on us, and you just thought, oh no, what's going to happen the rest of this game if they're running like this the entire game? Now, and Rule said this after the game, to Rule's credit, he's like, yeah, Tony then changed up the scheme, put an extra guy in the box, kind of put 2 more linebackers in the box. So that probably did force Rutgers to change a little bit, but they just straight up stopped giving him the ball after that. They didn't even try to attempt to, Nebraska changed their scheme. So Rutgers is gonna have to change what they do, but they just straight up didn't try running even against the new defensive scheme.
They didn't change their game plan. They just changed. Well, sorry, they didn't change their scheme or anything. They just changed their entire game plan. Like, hey,
Yeah.
that running thing that was working, no more.
Yeah.
And to Jet's point, he said he was keeping track of the percentage. I just did the percentage calculation. Comes out to just about basically 41% is what he finished with passing. 15 for 37.
It was like coaching malpractice is what happened. And yeah, like I get that if the defense makes adjustments, they put an extra guy in the box, it's just harder to block that. But like they just didn't try at all.
But to the point though, where not only did the defense step up, but this again is the Nebraska team stepping up, coaching wise, defensive wise, offense questionable, and obviously special teams. We're just putting them into a rocket ship this week. Spoiler.
Yes, no, I don't think it's a spoiler.
But no, the point being is like Nebraska teams from the past. We're still learning how to win, right?
Yeah.
But I think this was a key step in us being like, we can do it. It's not easy and it doesn't look pretty. And Rule even said the same thing. He's like, yeah, of course we'd want to win. He said something to the effect of like, yeah, of course we want to win by like 30, but sometimes you don't. Sometimes you win as we did, but we still won. Right. So,
and we haven't even mentioned the 6-play goal line stand that they had.
Oh yeah, exactly. That's 100%. Like if you're looking at like why the defense
and that is exactly in a moment where the game 100% could have flipped, because that was after the blocked punt. That was after Borkacher saved them from returning that punt for a touchdown at the 2-yard line. And they had 6 plays because one of those plays was like a defensive ghost flag on the defensive pass interference. So they got a fresh set of downs, and Nebraska still stopped them on all 4 downs at the 2-yard line. So
that pass interference was such a dumb call too, because wasn't it the one where the guy like dove into his knee?
Yeah.
It's like, oh, it's pass interference. Yeah. Like, I guess technically, but then my whole question is that what happened was like, was that even a catchable ball?
No, it was.
And I'm like, what is this? That was where I started to get my Nebraska doubt, where I'm like, yeah, no, this is where it's gonna happen.
But. Yeah. And that's where, the defensive line did step up, because Rutgers did try to run it inside, like on 2 of those plays, and we just stuffed them. And Buford easily could have had a pick 6 there if he just didn't bobble the ball. I mean, he had nobody to catch him if he had just caught that.
The worst part was you could see him too. He was going to catch the ball, and then he turned his head and he hadn't gotten the ball. He had not completed the action of the catch to then run off. He would have had nobody. He would have been gone.
And that for sure would have been iced the game, because it would have been 21-0 at that point. And but that was a very critical moment, because when that happened, I started getting shades of that 2021 Iowa game, where after Iowa blocked that punt, that entire momentum flipped, and then Iowa did end up winning that game. So I was like,
that's exactly what it was.
This is the moment here again, but the defense didn't break. They bowed up. They stuffed Rutgers on 6 plays to not let them score any points at all.
I don't know if you all saw the stat line, but Nebraska defense hasn't allowed a rushing touchdown yet.
Nope.
Yeah, still officially too.
All passing touchdowns, but they
are the only FBS team
blew over. I'm surprised they just blew over that, and I just learned that this last week. Like, that's impressive as hell, and I don't feel like any credit's been given to that yet.
No, they're the only FBS team currently to not allow a rushing touchdown so far this season. And on College Game Day, Herbstreit did mention that too when they were making their picks. He and Marshawn Lynch were the only ones that picked Nebraska, but Herbstreit was like, this game comes down to the running game, and Nebraska still has not allowed a rushing touchdown all season. So I just like, that's like why I'm picking Nebraska, because Rutgers is a run-heavy team, but Nebraska's not going to allow that. So we're going to put the game on the defense, and they did.
And
they did.
But here's the other thing that I think we all need to come to terms with as Nebraska fans. We can pay Tony White as much as we want to. I think he's gone next year. Dude absolutely deserves a head coaching job.
That's why obviously we don't want that, but I'm also like trying to enjoy every single bit of it right now.
But on the flip side, I do think that's why Rule has brought in people to work under Tony White. I can't remember who it was. Not Glenn Thomas, obviously, is the quarterback coach. It's the other guy that I'm thinking. The guy that took over. maybe.
Like the
I can't
secondary
remember.
coach,
I think so. Did he take over for
Evan Cooper.
Yes,
Yeah,
that's who I'm
yeah,
thinking.
Scott Butler.
Honestly, yeah, I could see I could
He was
see
the
him.
Bills secondary coach. That's now
Yeah.
with us. Yeah,
Well, and I could see him taking over as DC.
yeah, and
Our
that's
secondary has looked pretty good outside of a couple plays here and there, and I understand like those couple plays you can look at me like those are kind of problematic.
that was when that hire happened. I remember them. They were talking about like John Butler when they got. I think I don't know if he left the Bills or if he got like kind of fired from the Bills, but either way, the rumor was like, yeah, John Butler's going to hold out for another defensive coordinator job, whether in the NFL or college. So it was like a surprise that he took a DB job at a college level. And I think that was kind of like maybe a little hint like, oh, yeah, if Tony White goes, like Butler's probably going to be the no name pick to take over the defense type thing.
It's not even an if at this point. It's 100% a win. Tony White 100% deserves the head coaching job he's going to get. But
oh, yeah,
he was in theory supposed to get one last year, and he stayed with Nebraska.
Because that was the UCLA opening. That's his alma mater, which is now Eric Bieniemy.
Yep. So very huge, very big. I think we all just need to prepare for when he does finally leave. But at this point, the other thing is that Rule is building a culture at Nebraska to not only promote his guys that do that, but also he straight up said, like he was asked in the media, he's like, oh, like Tony White's been apparently been linked to some of these jobs. And he's like, yeah, I told him to go talk to him. But I said, but make sure you take a job that's right for you. Don't just take the first job that comes to you. And obviously it speaks volumes to what Tony White thinks of Matt Rule. So who knows? He might still be back again next year because there might not be not good enough, but there might not be a head coaching job that he wants. And he deserves, in my opinion, a good head coach job. On the flip side, just because he's a great defensive coordinator doesn't necessarily mean he's going to be a great head coach. They don't always work that way. But and I mean, unless Jet, if you had any other defensive thoughts, but I know we've got one other unit to talk about before we get to the picks. So
I really don't.
I don't want to talk about
them. Happy.
I know we have to talk about them, but I don't want to talk.
I know.
About it.
Well, okay. So there's two ways we can look at it. One, we have to talk about it, but we can start with the major positive, which is
Brian Buschini's a dog.
Absolute unit. Absolute dog.
I love
Dude
the
deserves the freaking game ball. He better have gotten it.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Punt blocking is obviously a very big issue because he almost got murdered on the very first one that caused him to have that injury. To the one that he played that entire game with that injury. He still got a second punt blocked, but he played that entire game through that injury, and he made the biggest punt of that game when it needed to happen. On his very last punt where he boomed it 69 yards to our nice factor, but the game on the line when you're giving Rutgers the ball back to try to go tie the game and you immediately flip the field to make them start at the 11-yard line. I mean, that was an incredible punt when you needed one from an injured guy to have that type of punt. On top of the fact that the special teams play was amazing because if you go back and look at the very first punt that got blocked on Rutgers or that got blocked that led to that Buschini injury, there's nobody covering the Gunners on that punt. And Rule said that entire week, like, yeah, this is what we know we do. We have a fake ready for it. Like, that fake almost should have happened the first play because not even, like, even before Buschini hiked the ball, you saw their Gunners come in getting ready for the block, which left Jalen Lloyd and whoever the other gunner was on the other side completely wide open. If they had just noticed that earlier, they probably could have called the fake then and maybe, backed Rutgers off a lot for blocking punts the rest of the game, which, again, I don't know why Rutgers also didn't try to go all-out block on that last punt from Buschini either. Considering you had blocked 2 already in the game, and you probably need that third one to not have to drive the length of the field, as we know what happened at the end of the game. Like, why wouldn't you come back for a third block punt when you've done it twice in the game already? Like, that part baffled me a little bit too. Like, I know Nebraska already faked it at that point and did like convert the fake, but they were having no issues blocking the other 2 as well.
Yeah, they were doing really well. And Rutgers was doing really well. Nebraska special teams continues to be an anomaly and a mystery that
We don't know what field goals like. We don't know if that got fixed or not, and we're not going to know for another 2 weeks.
and to the credit, I mean Rutgers, good Lord, Rutgers tried a field goal and they clearly did not make it. And granted, that was like a 52-yard field goal. The wind obviously took it. Nebraska still doesn't have an answer for field goals. I don't even think even if we had like Tristan Alvano, he was 100% healthy. I don't even know if we would have kicked a field goal.
Right.
Mostly because every fourth down we had that I remember was either close enough to try for it or so far away that if you tried for it, you were playing Madden on varsity at that point. So, like, yeah, special teams still remains bad. Outside of Brian Boomshini, absolute dog. Keep him. I mean, obviously, keep him as long as you can. Hopefully, he's not. Hopefully, he's not seriously hurt. But
yeah, we need him to be healthy.
He did make a comment though in his press conference, which I thought that was cool. They gave him a press conference at the end. I mean, he 100% deserved it.
Oh yeah.
But he even said he's like, "No, I'll be fine." I think it was just enough of a stinger that him knowing the bye week was coming up. I think that was another thing though too is
it wasn't even the initial hit. It was when he landed, he kind of like rolled over, or somebody rolled over onto him, and his back just like bent, probably hyperextended it because every time he trotted out, he was always holding his back. So if the way that you saw him land, it just kind of like he rolled and just hyperextended his back a little bit. But yeah, it looked like he just straight up got killed when he got hit.
The fact that his longest punt was also a 69 yard punt is just bonkers. I mean, I know a lot of that had to be wind, but still, didn't it got down in like the 5-yard line or something too, didn't it?
His last punt?
Yeah.
It was like, I think they started like the 10 or 11-yard line. So
was it? Okay, maybe.
But yeah, but I mean, from where he was kicking, when you needed that kick the most was the most important punt of the night that he had to do, and he did it.
Well, since we're ending with special teams, and I know I hinted at it earlier, but we're going to bring back the Fire into the Sun segment, baby. Now, here's the thing. We're all going to agree on the same thing, that the person that needs to get fired into the sun is the Nebraska special teams coach, Ed Foley. Love him. Love his heart, but it's not working out. Bring back Bill Bush. Hashtag.
I'm so torn because I have no idea if it's the coach or if it's the specialist. That's like, it's obviously, it's not Bushini. I mean, Bushini had a rough year last year, and besides the injury, I mean, he's been pretty consistent with his punts this year.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it's like, is it Foley or is it the place kicker? Is it the snappers? Is it the personnel rather than the coach?
Well, and they brought in Brett Maher too. And I know he's probably just like for field goals specific at this point, but is it him?
Right. And then you have that fake play that, kind of redeemed a little bit of it. So it's like, okay, so we're not settling for just punting every time. Like there is some trickery to it. And, we've returned more kickoffs and punts this year than we did all of last year. So like, that's also been a change. So it's like, who do you blame? Do you just blame the whole unit? Is it Foley? Is it, the people that are doing these jobs? It's kind of hard to encompass exactly where the problem is, other than just doing an overarching, just special teams umbrella.
Yeah, no, I'm of the mindset it's that. But to make this more interesting, we all have to have somebody else that's different that we're going to fire into the sun. So I know we're all leaning on somebody somewhere within the Nebraska special teams. I understand that. But then I don't know, Jet, I don't know how much you've listened to us, but for the Fire into the Sun segment, this is where we pick somebody that absolutely did not make their paycheck this last weekend in all of sports. Doesn't even necessarily have to be football. Generally at this point it is football, but so I'll start obviously outside of Nebraska special teams, and I'm saying Ed Foley. I'm blaming the coaching. I think he needs fired into the sun. My pick, though, is actually my other pick is going to go towards the Alabama defense because clearly they did not show up. The Alabama defense needs to be fired into the sun. I don't know if you blame. I did not watch enough of the game to be able to say it's the coaching or the players. So I'm just saying the defense is a unit. Fire them bad boys to the sun because no offense to Vanderbilt, it's great that you won. I love that you won, but Alabama should not have given up 40 points to Vanderbilt and lost. So, on to you guys.
I am trying. I don't know whether to take a college or NFL route on this one.
Well, I'm still looking at my actual pick, but one Nebraska pick to fire in his son. Who do we say number 3 was? Buford.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, buddy sold enough. You can go up to the sun, buddy. you can head up there.
All right, you know what? That's a fair pick.
That's a fair.
It's
that
just
is
a
fair
joke.
assumption.
It's just a joke because we need the guy, and he was number 3. So apparently he's a dog because we have that whole single digit thing.
Right.
So I mean that definitely just as a joke, but you did kind of sell us there, and you could be benched. Just saying.
I'm from the Nebraska's perspective. I'm just going to go the wide receiver core for this week. Again, a lot of it is kind of the play calling, Dylan, and the weather being a factor. But just from watching, I mean, there's that one play where Dylan tried to hit Isaiah on a long ball, and it almost just kind of looked like Isaiah gave up running the route on that sideline.
Yeah, that one also kind of looked like there was some confusion to begin with.
Too. Yeah.
So I don't know. That one's tough because I'm like, yeah, he could have kept running, but it looked like he wasn't supposed to. Like he stopped his route. Kind of one of those.
And Dylan threw it right,
like a double move, basically. I don't know,
but
but that's fair. I don't hate that.
I think they could have just done better creating separation. I didn't think Rutgers secondary came in touted, that this was a tough secondary to play against, but I don't think our receivers also did a good enough job of getting open or, any of that sort. Just again, when your three leading receivers for catches are a running back and, a freshman. I mean, Barney's great, but he just, the chunks of his yards were that one big 31-yard pass play. Outside of that, everything else was behind the sticks, and Fedoni just 3 catches for 15 yards. I mean, it's like where are your guys that you brought in? Where are Banks and where are Nayor? Where are the 2 guys that you brought in to be your top 2 wide receiver talents? Why did they have such a great game, the past 2 games, and then they just go quiet? That's where I'm at with those wide receiver rooms. We have the dudes, but there's some inconsistency with who's going to be the top dude, and that's another issue for Nebraska. Is you have the Rule, Rule knows it too. You have all of this talent. Is how do you spread the talent equally enough to win you football games, or do you just kind of have to focus on the top guys that you have and keep giving them the football? So, yeah, I'm not saying that I hate our wide receiver room. I love the guys that we have in there. Just for this week, they just didn't play well enough to make the plays that they did. Because I think the longest pass play for Dylan was probably Jamal Banks' 30-something yard catch or Barney's 30-yard something catch. So they just weren't sharp throughout the game, and that might be an issue going forward. It might not be. I don't know, but they definitely need to have a better game, especially Banks and Nayor. You can't bring in 2 transfer senior wide receivers and just have them go 1 catch for 31 yards between 2 of them. It can't happen for this offense going forward.
Yeah, that's fair.
And again, a lot of that's weather or Dylan, but who's to say?
Yeah. All right, boys, you want to get into some picks?
Yeah.
Because Nebraska doesn't have a game this week, so we're not going to have any score
Skurs
prediction.
by 90. Lock it.
Skurs by 90.
Skurs by 90.
Skurs will come out of the bye week victorious. I love it.
Yes.
All right, well, we're going to start again. Again, not gambling experts, but I have two. I'll call it the gimme picks. I'm going to start with James Madison coming off a loss last week.
After they put up 60-something on North Carolina.
Yeah. I think James Madison is going to have a bounce back game against Coastal Carolina. Their line right now is they're a 10-point favorite. I think they'll hit it. James Madison has looked like a wagon this year. But James Madison is also, I don't want to say unknown. That's not fair, but they're not necessarily who everybody's going to be tuning in for. So I'm going to make another pick.
It's a
And
Thursday night Sunbelt game too. Oh,
it is. It's going to be a good one.
Oh, yes.
I think the other pick that I'm going to take, which might be a little more of a fun one. Texas looks like the real deal. I hate that. Every fiber of my body hates this pick, but I think I'm going to take Texas as a 14-point favorite over Oklahoma. They just look like they're on a roll. That pains me so much to say it as a Nebraska fan, but I mean, undeniably the number one team in the country right now, in my opinion. Texas just looks unstoppable. So that's my pick for gimmies. I'll pass it to you guys.
Gimmies. Well, this is too much of a gimme, but
now, as a reminder, these are not actual gimme picks. We know nothing. These are just what we're calling them.
Illinois is a 19.5-point favorite over Purdue at home.
See, and I thought about that one as my sick pick, just because Illinois.
It also might be a sick pick if you want to say Purdue might cover 19.5 points, but they also
Illinois always does these weird things where they sometimes play games closer than they should, and that one seems prime for that.
Right.
That's not going to be my sick pick, but that was a candidate for me.
I'm gonna say, I think Wisconsin beats Rutgers. I think Wisconsin is better than Rutgers. Rutgers is a 2.5-point favorite. I think Wisconsin covers that and some. Just because you look at the offense at Wisconsin, even without Van Dyke as their quarterback, I mean, they put up 28, 27, 10. Obviously, the Alabama's the outlier of cause, but I mean, they still put up 21 to USC, who now does not look very good, but they, put up 52 on Purdue. But outlier there, Purdue is not good. But I think Wisconsin covers and beats Rutgers. And I think the world of Greg Schiano finally comes tumbling down again, which is what I want. He doesn't deserve, especially that last second timeout on our second kneel down that he pulled. Like, dude, get over it. Like, you lost. Like, there's no reason to call that timeout. But that's a sicko pick and it's a gimme pick at the same time. I think my sicko pick is Colorado over KSU.
Gosh,
KSU is a 4.5-point favorite, but I think Colorado's going to win that game.
You had to take it.
Jet, you can share it too.
Yeah, we got to do something different.
Or you could do the 21-point favorite that Boise is over Hawaii.
I mean, I was looking at the Wisconsin Rutgers one too. I just didn't see Rutgers being. They didn't look all that pleasing to me. I think Wisconsin could take that, but I can tell I'm a Nebraska fan because I want Washington over Iowa. I feel like they can get Iowa there.
Yeah.
I feel like Washington can take that for sure.
That's a good.
So wait, that's your gimme pick?
That's my gimme pick, honestly.
Okay.
I just think Iowa can't. I don't even know if they can score 2.5 points. So I mean, go Washington, go Dogs. I think that's gonna be a gimme for sure. But for my sicko pick, I had it. I don't know if it's really a sicko pick, but okay, after looking at the line, it is Vanderbilt. Kentucky is favored by 14, and I think Vandy's going to be riding very, very high going into that game.
Yes,
so
they will.
I feel like they might have a chance to maybe not win the game, but they can beat that spread for sure.
The other line that's also super interesting is undefeated Iowa State going to West Virginia, but only as a 3-point favorite.
Yeah, I was looking at that one too. I was like, I don't know about that.
Seems very weird. And I mean, I really obviously have not watched a lot of West Virginia football this year, but I feel like a top 11 team should be more than a 3-point favorite, even if it's on the road.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair.
And Iowa State has just sneakily been good.
They've been really good this year.
They've flown under the radar because nobody's really talking about it, but they're there.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, and I think they are the perfect example of like where they should be ranked. Like 11. I think they're in that. I think if the playoffs were to start right now, like Iowa State might not necessarily make it a deep run, but I feel like they'd make it interesting. And yeah, it's kind of I still don't like Iowa, but that one's at least a fair set. All right, well, I need some kind of sicko pick then. So I don't know. This one's 100% one that I don't know if I like or not, but that's why you make the picks. That's why you do it. Give me Florida covering Tennessee. 15.5 points.
Okay, yeah.
Florida hasn't necessarily looked great, but they haven't looked awful to where I think, especially after Tennessee lost to Arkansas State.
I was going to say, Napier was definitely on the hot seat there for a couple games, but
he was.
He turned it around. Turned it around as a 3-2,
But I mean, I think this is the example of the game where Tennessee either really needs to make a statement, but I don't know if they're going to make that kind of statement. I don't know if they're going to make a 16-point statement, I guess.
Right.
That's a lot. And I mean, college football, anything can happen, obviously. Give me Florida covering that spread.
Okay. That's a good pick, too.
I respect it.
There's a loaded slate this weekend, too.
Man, it's going to be fun.
I would say that every weekend because I'm a sicko college football person anyway. So
the sicko picks are so much easier to pick because it's like, what? I think they can make sure that, like the other one I was looking at. The other one I was looking at was like, oh, well, so the other team that I cheer for that's not necessarily a big deal is Tulane. So they played UAB last week and they beat them by like 72 to, what was it, 72 to 20 or 71 to 20. Sorry.
Mm-hmm.
So, but they don't play this week. I was going to pick them as my gimme. I'm like, they seem like they're on a roll. So, all right, boys. I think that's, unless we got anything else that I'm missing.
Enjoy the Husker bye week. Obviously, Skurs by 90 as always.
That's right.
Skurs I think always by 90.
Yeah, I think that wraps up Sportsball episode. What are we on? 16. So
yeah.
Obviously, want to give a shout out to my younger brother Jet here. Thank you for joining us for giving us a third.
Thank you, Jet.
Thank you for having me. I probably didn't speak as much as y'all would hope for, but I mean, I had a good time, and I would love to be back.
Hey, you spoke.
We can get that rolling even with Nate here.
That's right.
If we get that little cutie in here, I might talk a little bit more.
Nate's gonna listen to the whole thing, but I can't wait for that nice ending note that he's gonna listen to.
I miss you, Nate. I want to talk to you, buddy.
Well, all right. With that, obviously we don't have any Nebraska games to cheer for, so Nebraska by 90. And with that, it's been me and Andy, and of course Jet this time around. Thank you all for tuning in to the Sportsball Podcast, your source for sports. We'll see you next time.